This kid awakened an ability that everyone thought was useless, but what they would later discover is that it was actually a power with unlimited potential. Our protagonist, John Sang-woo, gained the ability to clone himself, and what could a chubby guy like him possibly gain from that? Absolutely nothing. The protagonist went back home. His job was to play a famous video game and sell his achievements. Curious about his new power, Sang-woo decides to test it out. He concentrates and makes a clone appear. He's surprised to see that the clone came out completely naked, and for the first time he can get a good look at how his little buddy is hiding. Under all that fat, it's super weird to touch another guy like that. But hey, it's his own body, so it's no big deal. He orders the clone to get dressed and decides to test if it will obey commands. Sang-woo makes the clone kneel and stand up several times. As expected, the little chubby guy was out of breath after just 5 reps, just as he thought. Such a weak clone is completely useless. His life was over, but then he noticed a system window appear, saying that his vitality had increased by 0.01. 1 month later, this was Sang-woo's body. He was running so much that the park regulars started to think something was wrong, like, that guy's not okay. But the truth was that the real Sang-woo was at home. In just 30 days, he had lost 44 pounds. He had discovered some incredible things about his power. The clone's exhaustion and pain didn't affect him at all. If a clone pushed itself so hard that it died, it would just disappear in a puff of smoke. The most impressive thing is that he gets all the positive effects from his clones, and they always look identical to his new physical form. He can also give his clones orders telepathically. His #1 slave was running and suddenly received the order to stop and do push-ups. And finally, the clones can't create more clones. If they could, the world would probably explode, with billions of them. Sang-woo made his clone train for a month straight without a single break, massively improving his stats and his physical appearance. But a guy can't live on just training and spending money. Sang-woo needed to work and earn some cash. He decides to get a job and take his clone with him to earn double the salary. His #1 clone will act like a normal person, and his name will be Gyeondo. One of the people there is an acquaintance of the protagonist. So Sang-woo simply tells him that he brought a friend for the job. The acquaintance, Daeokchil, tells them they need to register at the main building. Sang-woo is nervous. It's his first time doing something like this. This can't be a crime, right? If he's doing twice the work, it's only fair that he receives double the pay. After a few hours, our guy was getting a taste of the working man's life. His clone, #1, was working his butt off. Unlike him, the clone works to the point of exhaustion, so even when it's exhausted, the damn thing just doesn't stop. He thinks that it's going to be a problem if clone #1 just dies. In front of all these people, after all, I won't get his paycheck. At the end of the day, Sang-woo was the one who felt like he was about to die, and his clone was probably wondering if it would become the new original, if that happened. Mr. Daeokchil brought a drink for the guys, impressed that such young guys work so hard. He was amazed to see such dedicated youth. The truth, however, was that Sang-woo wouldn't even be there if his bank account wasn't about to hit 0. The man asked what university our protagonist attended, and after he said it was Kyunguk, Mr. Daeokchil was even more impressed with the boy. He mused that if his daughter were as smart as Sang-woo, maybe she could also get into a top-tier university like that. Our protagonist then says it's not actually that hard, just a little studying and she could make it. In that case, the man offers our guy a new job. He has become his daughter's tutor and must cram knowledge into her head by any means necessary. Daeokchil even offers a great price for it, because of course, a father has to do what's best for his children's future. The next day, Sang-woo felt the pain all over his body, from having truly exerted himself. If the clones suffer like this, he thought, maybe I should be a little easier on them. He mentally orders his slave, #1, to return home, since he can't work for more than 24 hours straight, without the police getting involved. Now that he had been more lenient with his clone, it was time to relax and get something to eat, and after a while the clone returned home. Sang-woo ordered it to take a shower because he had more work to do. With clone #1 now clean, Sang-woo wanted to try something new. He planned to use a needle to prick the fingertip of clone #1. The reason is that in this world, there are abilities that can be awakened, one of them being regeneration. If you get injured over and over again and let the body heal each time, you could awaken a high-level regeneration ability. Of course, doing that to yourself would be horrible, so the best way is to simply injure the clones. Sang-woo gives a new phone to clone #1. From now on, it has to answer his calls, and while it's at home, it has to be exercising. Sang-woo went out to improve his training regimen and decided to join a gym. His acquaintance bumped into him and said he almost didn't recognize him, joking that only half of the old Sang-woo was left in that body. Our protagonist replies that he has a new lifestyle now, and that in fact, he's on his way to sign up for a gym. His friend says it's a huge coincidence. He's also heading to a new gym right now, because he heard there's a very attractive female instructor there. He drags Sangwoo along to check it out. The protagonist signs up and does the initial tests, but his real intention is to send his clone here to train every day. His so-called friend is the type of person who yells while lifting weights and loves being the center of attention. The acquaintance's awakened ability is strength, so he's naturally strong, with a strength stat of 2.1. While he was figuring out how to use the machines, his real friend Die Chill called to see if he was okay, and if he could come to the first tutoring session with his treasure. Sangwoo headed to the man's house after leaving the gym. By the way, that obnoxious guy didn't even end up joining, because, surprise, there was no attractive female instructor there. Sangwoo thinks to himself that he got lucky. Now he doesn't have to worry about that guy bothering his clone number 1. When he arrived at Deok Chill's house, the noise inside was really loud, and when the man suddenly threw the door open, the pain also shot up quite a bit, at least for our protagonist. He just found out what Deok Chill's daughter is like. It turns out she's a real treasure. Sang scratches his head looking forward thoughtfully. Mr. Deok Chill is extremely worried, apologizing profusely for the incident with the door. A caring hand places a small plate with a sliced apple on the table. It's Deok Chill's wife. She says she barely recognized the boy because of his weight loss, and he explains that he has been exercising a lot since they last saw each other. While wiping his mouth with a napkin, his gaze turns to the girl, Miss Hyun. She seems a little nervous, with her hands resting on her knees. She is blushing and looking down, but she answers when her name is called. As Sang introduces himself, the ecstatic parents notice how docile and flushed she is, believing she has taken a liking to the boy. Jian is very embarrassed because she thinks Sang must have heard her yelling through the door. The protagonist confirms that she is in her 3rd year and asks to see her grades before starting the lesson, but this makes the girl look like she just saw a ghost. Sang holds the girl's report card, trying to hide his disappointed expression upon seeing her grades. Her grades are not good at all, ranging only between 1.6 and 1.7. The parents look completely stunned, while the girl is so embarrassed, she doesn't know where to look. Dae Chill slowly gets up and quietly gathers his things, with the same shocked expression on his face, and then shouts that he's leaving for work, leaving his wife to handle the whole mess. Sang stops looking at the report, the card, and turns his gaze forward again. She is looking down, dejected, with a face like a lost puppy. With a reassuring smile, he says it's no problem, he didn't have great grades either, and he knows a lot of tips and tricks. The girl's face lights up like Christmas morning and she clasps her hands together, excited. Our protagonist says they will both do their best to reach their goal and they decide to have tutoring sessions twice a week. Back at Sang's place, we see his apartment complex from the outside. He enters his humble home, thinking that he still has a long way to go. Remembering his tutoring sessions with the girl, the scenes flash through his mind. John seems very dedicated and hardworking, and she accepts all of her tutor's advice. Putting away his coat, he reflects that it's lucky that the girl is smarter than he expected. As he sits down, in front of his computer, he realizes that number 1 must have gone to work. He reflects that for now he's given his clone a cell phone, but if the number of clones increases, managing multiple phones will be a big problem. Sang starts browsing a site called Hunter Web, which offers tips on dungeons, party finders, skill information, and a marketplace for buying and selling. His goal is to search Hunter Web for a skill related to his own. He sees several ads, people looking for skills, scrolls for sale, and other things, and in shock, he spits out his drink when he sees a skill selling for 100 million won. Another telepathic skill is also for sale for the measly sum of 400 million, and he can't hold back his tears. But the guy reflects that if he had that kind of money, he would rather buy a house than a skill. Leaning his head back in his chair, he lets out a sigh of despair. For him, it will take a very long time to save up that much money for a skill. He wonders if hunters really earn that much. He checks his bank account on his phone and, once again, sees how empty it is. Throwing himself onto the bed in disgust, the protagonist feels like he just wants the world to explode, but intrusive thoughts start to appear, and he wonders if he should become a hunter. News articles about hunters and their magnificent feats start to appear on his screen. He gets up, lost in thought and not quite sure what to do. Sang starts to think that his cloning ability is amazing and that he shouldn't limit them to doing manual labor. Grabbing his coat, the determined guy has a new idea in mind. He gets dressed and decides that he is now going to try to become a hunter. His vitality increases in February, portals appeared and monsters came out of them. More than half of the population died. It seemed that humanity would be annihilated forever. But in the midst of all the disaster, humans with special powers began to appear. And with them on the front lines, humanity won. And now, in 2023, there are people who hunt the remaining monsters. They are the hunters. Sang is watching an online course that explains how he can get his license and become a hunter. He decides to write down tips on how to pass the hunter exam, and heads to the Hunter Association while stretching. He realizes that since he started cultivating his vitality, he has felt much better, even sleeping less. He enters the association and makes his way through the building. A masked man with a sword, on his back, is talking to an arms dealer. Another bald man, and covered in scars, is cleaning the parts of a firearm. And a suspicious-looking old man with a large hat is waiting in a corner of the room. Sang is amazed by the number of strange types of people he can see there. He notices that there don't seem to be many people taking the exam. A uniformed woman announces that registration for the test will close in 20 minutes. He knows he needs to go to the basement, but the situation is starting to make him anxious. He arrives at a room with a sign that says, Hunter License, Examination Room. With a trembling voice, the protagonist opens the door and says, "Excuse me." Incredibly, every person there was either super intimidating or just plain weird, with no exceptions. Sweating like a pig, he wonders why there are so many people here. Two sinister-looking men laugh at the protagonist for saying "excuse me," as if he were some kind of fool. Someone in military boots approaches with firm steps. A scarred hand grips the table tightly. The man is a class hunter named Han Myung-won, and he will be the supervisor for the license exam. The test consists of a written exam, a practical test, and an aptitude test. Cheating is strictly forbidden, and he emphasizes that they never forget cheaters. The men who were laughing at Sang fall silent, intimidated. The protagonist is also intimidated. He understands that the pressure here is intense. Looking at all the participants, the instructor announces that the hunter license exam will begin. Now, a car drives down the street, the traffic flows smoothly, and there isn't much congestion. A person with headphones replies that they will deposit everything before the end of the month. The person with the headset is the driver of the car and tells his boss to calm down, because he's not a rookie at this job. But his boss yells through the headset, making the poor guy's ear hurt. The driver's name is CEO Kang, and he works for the JM agency. He knows his boss is going to kill him, saying the money isn't coming in. But there are many places he needs to go. Looking at his watch, he notices it's 15 minutes to 8. The hunter exam is almost over. He continues driving across a bridge. As the setting sun bathes the whole scene in orange, someone raises their arm with a bracelet and a status screen, which announces that they have passed the exam. That someone is Sang, who looks confused as he realizes he made it. Everyone told him it was easy, but he never imagined it would be this simple. The written questions were pretty easy, and he just had to memorize a few things. They give you a lot of time to train for the practical test, and the target is super close. And the aptitude test feels more like a high school ethics quiz, with questions like if he's ever thought about shooting. Sang wonders if it's okay for the test to be like this, since this job is all about taking risks and using weapons. As he walks back home, he's deep in thought and looks to the side, looking up at a tall building. He thinks to himself, it seems like the government really wants them to do this. But with a sigh, he decides it's better not to overthink it. Suddenly, he comes across a group of people, and some men in suits are handing out business cards. The men are very well dressed and groomed, extremely stylish. They smile warmly as they hand the cards to passers-by. Sang wonders if they are people from the guilds trying to recruit new hunters. And soon, someone approaches him and offers him a card too, congratulating him on passing the exam. The card is from the Waom agency and has the name Seo Kang Junmo on it. He introduces himself and says that whenever Sang wants to buy an item or find a monster to hunt, they can help him for a small fee, a bit awkwardly. The protagonist scratches the back of his neck and thanks him, then opens his status screen, and something there really surprises him. He realizes that his cloning ability has leveled up. It's now at level 2, and while Junmo is still talking, he suddenly runs off in a hurry, saying he'll call them some other time. The poor guy is left standing there complaining, and he whispers for him not to forget to call back. At his apartment complex, Sang runs in from the street, puts a hand to his face, and is making some suspicious sounds. The guy is completely euphoric, because he can now make 2 clones at once. His new clone is being created. Just like the first one, it appears in a puff of smoke. There are now 3 Sangs, and he says that he's counting on the good work of his new number 2 clone, showing the small card he got from the 4M agency. He says that now, They're all ready to become hunters. Junmo tosses the remaining cards onto the seat of the car and says he's finally handed out almost all of them. Adjusting his tie, he hopes they'll contact him soon. He thoughtfully looks at his reflection in the car window, watching the night. Now we see a gigantic building. The official Haesun Guild building, the #1 in Korea. A document with highlighted information is lying on a desk. A man, drinking from a cup, says they need to arrange the payment according to what's on the list. Junmo takes the document and says okay, but as he reviews the information more carefully, something worries him. In the total payment field are listed the prices for slime fluid, horned rabbit horn, and troll fluid. Sweating, he holds the paper, a little confused, and starts to ask a question. He noticed that the amount seems strange, but before he can finish his sentence, the other man cuts him off, calling him Junmo. With a mocking look, he asks him if it hasn't been a while since he joined the Jesson, and Junmo confirms that it has. The man then explains that he needs him to be sharp, which worries him a bit. Placing the cup on the table, the guy adds that if they do everything exactly by the book, there won't be anything left for them. He puts a hand on Junmo's shoulder, saying he knows he's an upright guy, but that they don't need to be so particular about the guild's services. Junmo looks furious and ends up crumpling the paper. But the man, still mocking him, asks again if he understood. Back in his car, Junmo says that if he had known it would be such a complicated situation, he would have just kept his mouth shut. A ringtone starts to sound from his suit pocket, and he quickly reaches for it, thinking it's a cell phone. When he answers, he confirms that he is Kang Junmo from the JM agency. On the other end of the line is John Sang-woo, who says there's something he'd like to discuss. Night has fallen, and we see the outside of a shopping complex near a coffee shop called Starbucks. Junmo enters the coffee shop looking for the person he's supposed to meet. Sang is sitting at a nearby table and waves at him as soon as he enters. Junmo apologizes for making him wait, but Sang explains that he just arrived too. The man asks if they are going to order something to drink. A coffee shop employee is near the register, and Sang says, "Yes, I'd like to get something." They ordered an iced coffee that looks delicious. The man confirms if Sang wants to go on a safe hunt, one that even a beginner could handle. Sang says yes, so the man asks what his ability is. With a serious expression, while holding his coffee, the protagonist says it's cloning. Putting a hand on his chin, Junmo thinks that he has heard of this ability before, one that creates an illusion that can do anything. As Sang chugs his coffee, Junmo thinks that for a rookie who creates illusions, it would be physically difficult for him to be useful in a hunt, but he says it's a good ability anyway and hands him the contract to read. The first hunt is recommended to be in slime territory. They aren't dangerous, but when eliminated, they release a toxic gas, so masks will be necessary. Sang uses his phone to take a picture of the contract and says this will be a piece of cake for him. The second one would be in the horned rabbit area. It's possible to hunt there for long periods, but since they are hard to catch, it will be difficult to make a lot of money. There are other low-class monsters like giant rats, but the two he mentioned before are the only ones where he can guarantee Sang's safety. The protagonist thinks that both places sound pretty good, and he also likes the prices he'll get for the items he collects, and Sang agrees. He says he would like to proceed with that contract, with a friendly smile. Junmo thanks the new hunter, and since he liked both properties, the man asks if he's already decided which one he's going to choose, but with a decisive and arrogant move, another one of Sang's hands answers no and stamps the paper. This move startles poor Junmo, and now he realizes he's not just dealing with a single copy of the person. He lifts the stamp from the paper, and there's his signature in red. Startled, Junmo looks at the person who just stamped the document, and now, with two Sangs present, they both declare, "When we said we liked both locations, we meant we'll take both." During another meeting with a client, a man with a sword on his back and spiky hair speaks with Junmo. He says he heard the man's ability is cloning. The man looks like a masked ninja, not showing his full face, and confirms that it's true. Junmo asks to see his cloning technique and, upon witnessing the demonstration, is left astonished by what he has just seen. The ninja swordsman sheathes his sword on his back, and his several other clones surround him, all in a battle stance, ready to attack. But Junmo realizes that something isn't right here, and gets worried. And the clones created by the ninja lunge forward in a precise sword attack, the blades appearing to pierce right through the body of the original ninja who is sitting in the chair. Poor Junmo covers his face, unable to watch, and begs them to please calm down. With teary eyes and a racing heart, he looks forward again. And the ninja, now being pierced by a fake blade, explains that it's all just an illusion, nothing is real. Junmo slowly reaches out to touch the sword, but his hand passes right through it, without causing any damage at all. but the clones are perfect for drawing the attention of nearby monsters. That tense situation made Yunmo nervous, but now he begins to laugh in relief. And coming back from his memories, the man thinks that the ability of cloning from back then was definitely an illusion. But this time he can clearly see that the situation is very different. Sang picked up the contracts with his own hands to check the terms. Besides, he was also chugging coffee like a camel dying of thirst, with an extremely worried expression. The man realizes that this is the first time he has ever seen an ability like this. Just to test the waters, he decides to ask if they are twins by any chance. This question makes Sang burst out laughing. Pointing at his clone, he says while still laughing his head off that it's understandable he would think that. He puts a hand on his copy's shoulder to show that it's physical. Sang explains that this guy right here is his clone. Junmo might have mistaken his ability for someone else's, but this clone is real, and he even adds that he has another copy, but he sent that one to the academy. Junmo is surprised and asks if the clones can build muscle too. The protagonist says yes, if his clone gets stronger, he gets stronger too. It's possible to increase his stats by using clones. This makes the man start thinking that this ability isn't merely an F-class ability, but that it has gigantic potential. But getting back on topic, Sang has a question for him. He wants to know if it would be a problem for the same person to enter multiple locations at the same time. Junmo explains that entering simultaneously would be difficult because a record of a person's entry is kept. With a grim look on his face, the kid knows that if this bureaucracy exists, it would be a huge problem for him. But the charitable Junmo says he'll try to talk to the association about it, and asks him to come along. Scratching his head, the kid says that's fine, but he won't be able to use the ability until tomorrow afternoon because of the cooldown. So Junmo asks them to meet in 2 days at the Hunter Center. With a somewhat suspicious expression, he asks about the contract and, with his stamp in hand, Sang says he already stamped it and that he verified the percentage split and from the photo that number 2 sent earlier. The man then suddenly stands up, and this movement startles poor Sang. Extending his hand, Junmo says he looks forward to working together and, with a somewhat distant look in his eyes, Sang starts to reflect on the important step he has just taken. They finally shake hands, sealing the deal. The clone remains apathetic, sitting in its place while the two seal the contract with a handshake. 2 days later, back at the huge Hunter Center building, our protagonist walks down the street, carefully looking from side to side. Someone calls out to Hunter Nim, and he looks up, surprised. Junmo adjusts his tie while saying that the kid arrived early and it wasn't time yet. Sang explains that he came quickly in case he was already waiting, and asks if this is the association inside the Hunter Center. Junmo confirms, and they take a number from a ticket vending machine. The place is very large, and a voice calls for the next hunters to be served until it's Sang's turn, and the employee asks if he wants to get dual access to the hunting ground. He explains to the protagonist that he is the first person since someone named Jumper to request this dual access right. As expected, this is not a common case, and the employees search through piles of files. Sometime later, the employee returns and asks him to go to the civil service office to process the relevant documents. That whole mountain of paper scares Sang, as well as Junmo, who just stare at the giant pile. The man says he will take care of these documents and asks the kid to head to the skill demonstration room. He goes to a counter with a female employee and hands her the pile of papers. Meanwhile, Sang arrives at a room where there is a young woman in a lab coat and a transparent chamber. Concentrating, he forms a cloud of energy, just as he always does when he's about to summon his clones, and a new Sang appears in front of him, perfectly identical and completely naked. Apparently, the protagonist forgot this little detail, leaving the young woman quite embarrassed. Elsewhere, a man is working on the bracelet with high-precision tools. He examines a specific part with great concentration and then announces that the identical identification bracelet is complete. Now the clones can access the hunting grounds by scanning their fingerprints. Simultaneous entries and exits are possible, and wherever he enters, the clone can also enter. The man is excited. He says this is an unprecedented ability, not just in Korea, but in the entire world. Sam finds the man's attitude a bit invasive, grabs his clone, and says they're leaving. The man is a bit disappointed, as he believed the clone could have been an excellent test subject. Sam meets up with Junmo again, and says the authorization request is finished. Now all the preparations for the solo hunt are complete, and he and his clone are ready. Junmo asks if he's heading to the hunting ground now, and he says yes, because his schedule is free today. The man asks why he hides the clone with a mask, and the protagonist explains that there are many people interested in him, but while the two are talking, Someone is watching the three of them from an upper floor. It's a person with a sinister aura, showing a malicious smile. This person is the guildmaster, Gisung Shin. Gisung scratches the back of his neck and says he was wondering who it was, and found out it's Junmo. And then he shouts Kang Junmo's name from above, getting the guy's attention. A loud noise comes from above, a huge crash, and surprising everyone on the floor below. The guild leader jumps from the upper level, making a hero landing with a smug smile. He says it's been a while, and to think they'd meet in a place like this. Sam gets a little tense, looks at the man who just landed, and thinks he might know him. Shin starts to get up and says he didn't know he was still working as a hunter. The protagonist recognizes that this guy is the guildmaster and that he fell from it. Junmo maintains a serious and stoic expression, looking directly at Shin, and almost through gritted teeth, he greets the man very politely. This makes the man burst into laughter, asking what's with the sir and all the formalities. Looking at him, he asks who this guy is. Junmo explains that he's a hunter associated with his company. Shin's pupils dilate and he sighs a little, looking the protagonist up and down. He says he understands, and then his eyes are drawn to one particular thing. He asks Junmo if Sam is, perhaps, an F rank. The protagonist doesn't like this assumption at all and looks completely dejected. With a trembling voice, mocking poor Junmo, he says that someone who once supervised C and D ranks has fallen so low, as he laughs hysterically. Has stooped so low, all while laughing hysterically. Says he can't believe he's now looking after an F rank, especially one dressed in a sweatshirt like that. This irritates Junmo, who clenches his jaw, containing the urge to insult the big shot's entire family line. But Senk places a hand on his shoulder, as if to tell him to calm down. He has a serene expression, unfazed by the pompous man's mockery. The man, in turn, even wipes tears from his eyes from laughing so hard. He puffs out his chest at Senk and says it looks like he has something to say. But the protagonist returns a very friendly smile, as if he comes in peace, and says it's an honor to meet the country's #1 guildmaster. The flattery technique worked. Shin says he doesn't have the eyes of an F rank, and seems to have a good head on his shoulders, but with a more sinister aura. Senk says he's not done yet, and that's not all. That the guild is #1 in the country's dungeon monopoly. Shin's expression brightens even more, and it's also #1 in hunting ground restrictions. And as for payment fees, Senk acts overwhelmed, saying that for someone so important to be praising him, he has no idea what to do now, scratching the back of his neck. Shin says the boy has guts and feels flattered, and a sinister energy begins to emanate from him as his smile turns dark. He puts his hands on Senk's shoulders and says he wants to see if his skills are as good as his courage. This worries our protagonist, who immediately starts sweating nervously, but, interrupting the situation, a man with glasses and a bowl cut shouts for his lord and runs toward Shin, who refers to the four-eyed man as a party pooper, and so he says that's all for today and walks away from the boy. Looking at him with malicious eyes, he asks for the protagonist's name, but our boy doesn't just hand over the information and tells him to find out for himself. Waving his hand, he says he's a funny guy and bids him farewell. Yunmo, the man with the glasses, gives Mr. Shin a little scolding, saying he shouldn't just leave the association like that. Now in the car, Yunmo, Senk, and his clone are silent and thoughtful. A little awkwardly, Yunmo thanks the protagonist for what he did earlier, but he says he couldn't just stand by and watch. He had to act. Yunmo asks if he knew about his relationship with the Yishan Guild. The guy replies that he's not a fool and found out a few things by researching the JM agency. He says he had trouble finding information, but managed to find a rumor that Yunmo was fired from the guild. Some pages show people commenting that the guild is horrible, among other harsher insults. And Sang adds that there were comments telling people to never join the JM agency because they would be targeted by the Yishan Guild. So, a bit confused, Yunmo asks why he chose this agency, and with a sly smile, the guy replies that it was because of the very good pay rate. The clone, as usual, is silent, just looking out the car window. Furthermore, the protagonist says he can rely on Yunmo if there's anything he can't handle, in the industry and with the guild. The man feels flattered by this show of trust and grips the steering wheel firmly with both hands. And so, he thanks him wholeheartedly and continues on his way through the traffic. Inside the gym, background music is playing to pump up the attendees. A hand wrapped in bandages, already covered in bruises, trembles as it performs the exercise. Toned and trembling legs also press on with total determination. It's Sang's clone, completely focused on the exercises, which even worries the other people in the gym. The instructor bites his thumbnail, watching all that unusual effort. A woman approaches and asks if it's okay for him to keep pushing himself like that, but the instructor explains that he tried to talk to him, but he doesn't listen, the poor clone. He looks exhausted, but continues to do as he's told, until a sound comes from his pocket. Holding the bar firmly with his injured hands, he takes a short break to check a message on his phone. It's John Sang-woo asking him to finish his workout, shower, and wait in front of the gym at 0004. The clone then chugs a can of a drink in a single gulp and stops his workout. The concerned woman says it looks like he's stopped for now, and the instructor Avile breathes a sigh of relief. In a dark cave, some lava slimes crawling on the ground. Slimes are everywhere, from the floor to the walls, and even dripping from the cave ceiling. One of them explodes, making a loud noise and releasing a strange gas. A person in full gear and a gas mask is holding a hammer. After hitting the slime, they aim some kind of suction hose at the remaining goo, and this goo is sucked into a container on their back, which is already almost full of red liquid. The person in the gas mask goes through a blue portal and heads toward two armed guards. The person is none other than Sang, who takes off his mask and exhales a sigh of relief. Junmo asks him how it went, and he says the gas mask is really uncomfortable. Junmo explains that although the slime hunting ground is safe, hunters don't usually go there, and the profit isn't very good either. Looking at his damaged glove, Sang realizes he probably won't be doing this for much longer. He has to fill the container and unload it, but no matter how patient a person is, it's hard to last more than 6 hours. Junmo says he could last longer if he had a better gas mask and good quality gear. Sang is pretty sure he couldn't stand it for even 2 hours, let alone 6. But with a brilliant idea, he points to his clone and asks, what if he went instead? And without a shred of pity, the guy shoves a gas mask onto the clone's face. He also ties the laces of his combat boots tightly and puts the gloves on him to protect his hands from the elements. Proud and full of hope, Sang says goodbye to his clone and wishes number 2 good luck. And without wasting any more time, he asks Junmo if they can go to the horned rabbit hunting ground now. He was about to point to clone number 1, but he's not there with them. With a blank look on his face, Sang remembers he hasn't picked him up from the gym yet. The poor clone number 1 is waiting with his gym bag, his body trembling from the intense workout. There he is, clone number 1, waiting just as his master ordered. A car pulls up and parks right next to him. Sang yells from the window, telling number 1 to get in the car. The sun is setting over the large city, casting a wonderful glow. Junmo asks if Sam plans on just calling his clones number 1 and number 2. The protagonist explains that since they're all identical, things would get confusing if he started giving them creative names. The man agrees, saying that, since they're clones, names aren't really necessary anyway. Changing the subject, Sam says he heard that people normally use guns to hunt the horned rabbits. Making a gun gesture with his hand, he asks if he'll need to prepare any special equipment for that. Junmo explains that he can use his own equipment, but there's also gear available to rent at the hunting ground, though it's not free. But he agrees that the guy will need his own gear eventually. Since the rented equipment can only be used on-site, it's easier for the owners to retrieve it. With his hand on his face, Sam starts to think until he hears something. The man tells him they've arrived. That's what the sound was. They're now at Johnson's field, filled with battle tanks and all sorts of military equipment. The guards securing the area are heavily equipped and armed. One of them holds light sticks, signaling the way for tanks and aircraft. Sam notices the place is huge, nothing like Junmo's slime hunting ground. He explains that this is the famous field where a monster invasion once took place. Bringing a hand to his chin, the guy thinks that he's heard of this before. Normally, portals are disconnected from the outside world, and most hunts happen after the hunters have already entered. However, in some cases a monster breaks through the portal and destroys the surrounding area, turning the area into a battlefield. And 5 years ago, a monster invasion happened right here. Most of the stronger monsters were defeated, leaving only a few F-class and E-class ones behind. So it's a great place. Worried, Sam asks if there will be any noise complaints. The two get ready to enter the field, stopping at a weapon rental shop. A scowling clerk shows them a powerful weapon and says it will be 700,000 and 11,000 in total. Wincing at the price, Sam knows it's a ridiculous amount of money, but he hands over his card. Junmo explains that ammunition is the biggest expense, but if he manages to hunt just one horned rabbit, everything changes. They're that valuable. The area is divided into sections, even within the field itself, and the place they're heading to is on the 3rd floor. They arrive at the spot, and the man in front announces that they've reached their destination, and as they stand there, a deafening explosion erupts. Junmo covers his ears with his hands. The field has a surprisingly pleasant atmosphere. There are people shooting and others eating off to the side, resting and taking a break. A long-haired man, smoking a cigarette, is holding a gun, complaining that he missed again, and another guy in a bucket hat is holding a horned rabbit he just hunted. He already has a few in his bag, the result of a very successful hunt. This impresses our protagonist, who was told that hunting even one is a huge challenge. Sang's post is number 4, so Junmo points out where the guy should go as they get ready. The man asks if he's confident in his shooting skills. Sang assembles his weapon and lets out a smug laugh, asking Junmo who he thinks he is, getting arrogant. He says he only missed 3 shots during his shooting test, but the target back then was much closer. He finishes assembling the gun and says he feels very sorry for the horned rabbits and, to protect his ears from the gunshots, he puts on some ear protectors. As he aims his rifle, he declares that the rabbit won't be able to escape the sights of Ujang-san's eagle eye. For a moment, Junmo is just glad that everyone there is wearing ear protection. The protagonist manages to spot a motionless rabbit in the field, shouting at the top of his lungs that he found one, and his speed surprises Junmo. Calmly and precisely, he focuses on the center of his target. Then, with the utmost care, he pulls the trigger. As he fires his first shot, he thinks to himself, the hunt begins now. 3 hours later, night has fallen over the hunting ground, and the sky is dark. Our protagonist looks like he's seen a ghost, his eyes wide with shock. He didn't manage to land a single shot and is devastated, completely disappointed. He slumps into his chair and says it makes no sense. He felt his aim was perfectly fine, but rabbits have very long ears and extremely sharp hearing, so they can detect the shot before it arrives. Given the distance from the tower to the field, they have time to escape. Frustrated, Sang explains that the moment he tried to shoot, the horned agent Yunmo also had to leave because it was getting very late. Unfortunately, he didn't even make back the money he invested in ammunition. He wonders if he should call it a day. He calls number 1, who quickly responds to his master. Sang orders him to hunt the rabbits with the gun. Every time he catches one, he must send Sang a message, and if he runs out of bullets, he must call. Disappointed, the poor protagonist sighs, regretting having to resort to this, and so he decides to return home, as his day has concluded. Back in the comfort of his home, he is in bed looking at his status screen, noticing small increases in his mana, which is because number 2 is hunting slimes with great efficiency. Opening his general status window, he sees the significant boosts that are occurring. His stats are increasing endlessly, but something is bothering him. He recalls what happened earlier with guild leader Hisun, who almost got him into serious trouble. Closing his eyes and trying to calm himself, he knows he still has a long way to go. The young man starts to feel tired, yawning after such an eventful day, but he can't stop thinking about those pesky little rabbits that managed to get away from him. Sang's eyes snap open again. He's having a hard time relaxing, just hoping that number 1 manages to catch at least one horned rabbit so that the investment in the gun will have been worth it. Finally, he turns over in bed and seems to be falling into a deep sleep, but suddenly his phone screen lights up and several message notifications appear. In the middle of the night, among the 46 unread messages, a large portion of them are from his clone, who managed to hunt several rabbits. It's a splendid day in the city. The sky is partly cloudy, though predominantly blue. We see a shop and a building complex surrounded by various signs. Yunmo is lost in thought, with his arms crossed, while he gazes through the window at a ringing phone, abruptly interrupts his moment of peace. He answers immediately, identifying himself as a member of the Hua Twin Agency. The voice on the other end of the line asks if this is the hunter Yung Sang-woo's agency. The person introduces himself. He's the manager of the slime hunting ground. He asks Junmo to come quickly and stop Sang. When Junmo asks why, the man explains that Sang has been hunting non-stop for 24 hours and has completely lost his mind. Worried and with a noticeably shaken voice, Junmo assures him that he will get there as soon as possible. Meanwhile, our hero has just woken up from a very pleasant nap. Checking his phone, he realizes he has received several messages and that number 1 has run out of ammo. Suddenly, his eyes fly wide open. Checking his notifications, he wonders why he has so many messages piled up. Sang looks like he's seen a ghost, his gaze fixed on the screen. The agent has already arrived at the slime hunting ground and also wears the same astonished expression. Huge tanks of slime liquid are completely full to the brim. The hunt turned out to be a resounding success. The man wonders how it was possible to fill all these storage containers in just one day. The other soldiers approach a masked man, visibly concerned about his condition. A reddish liquid begins to drip from the man's mask. Junmo takes out his cell phone and makes a call, thinking that this is not the right time for such a situation. On the other end of the line, Sang answers frantically. The people inform him that his clone has filled all the containers and that they are about to clear everything out, so he must order the clone to stop hunting. Sang looks pleased to hear this, but then asks if the cleanup crews could also head to Ujangsan. Junmo, perplexed, asks him what he means, and then we see it, a gigantic mountain of horned rabbits hunted in that very spot. The protagonist explains that the monster corpses are blocking everyone's path. A man present comments that he can't even quantify the number of rabbits. Everyone is in a state of shock. Another person whispers that no one would notice if they took one. Clone number 1 is at his post, wearing a cap and a mask like any other individual, but with his hands visibly dirty from the intense hunt, when a man in a suit approaches him, handing him a business card, stating that the clone has displayed truly amazing skills. The card contains information about the Brown Bear Guild, whose leader is Kim Byung-sik, and before the clone can even accept the card, the man asks if he already belongs to a guild, but the clone remains completely silent, totally ignoring the man's questions. Trembling nervously, the man in the suit tries to keep his cool, aware that most talented people tend to be a bit peculiar. Another man in a suit nearby crosses his arms and simply says, "No, it's no use." A line of men in suits is standing right next to him, and they have all tried to talk to the clone, but he doesn't utter a single word. He then realizes they are all recruiters from major guilds, as the men in suits talk amongst themselves. Sank approaches the clone and hands him a small green box, and in a low voice tells him it's more ammunition. Still whispering, he tells the clone to keep hunting and, if the agent shows up, to let him handle the corpses. The protagonist pats his clone on the shoulder, praising him and saying, "That was truly excellent." And for the first time, we see a kind of emotion in the clone. He looks genuinely happy to receive the compliment, and, without further delay, reloads his weapon with more ammo and prepares to continue the task. Everyone present is stunned to see him preparing to hunt again, but many there are eager and curious to watch how this enigmatic man operates. Some even start filming from a distance. Sam begins to think that perhaps he underestimated his clone's capabilities. Currently, the clones receive 50% of his stats. This means they can perform 50% of Sam's actions. However, their ability to operate like machines without any hesitation and with immense concentration is a colossal advantage. The protagonist is lost in thought about his clone's advantages when a voice exclaims, "Professor." It snaps him out of his daydream, and as he turns his head, the young woman asks him curiously what he's thinking about so intensely. He tries to compose himself, claiming he was just observing her activity and that it was much better than the last time, but she insists on finding out what was really on his mind. Sang explains that it's nothing major, he simply went to a hunting ground and got better results than he anticipated. Alan is stunned to learn that her tutor is a hunter, and she even gets up from. The young man remembers he'd never mentioned it, and she confirms she had no idea. Then, she pulls out her phone and asks if her tutor knows the hunter everyone has been talking about today. She shows him a video and says it's the Hawkeye shooter of Hanyang-san, and Sang almost chokes when he sees it's his own clone. Still a bit stunned by the shock, he can't manage to answer whether he knows him. She brings the phone even closer and comments that the man has already hunted more than 200 rabbits and could set a new record, but he doesn't say a single word. He doesn't respond to anyone, and that makes him even more fascinating, because he's so mysterious. When they asked for his name, he only replied that he is the Hawkeye of Hanyang-san. This information causes Sang's expression to darken. The young woman comments that she thinks the hunter is really cool, and that her real dream is to become a hunter too. The protagonist asks if she is an awakened. She says yes, and adds that she also has a license, but she's scared to go to the hunting grounds. She swallows hard, taking a moment as she watches the protagonist tucking his hair behind his ear. She asks if she gets a good grade, if he could take her to a hunting ground, even just once. Sang replies that it's not a problem, but if she manages to pass the university entrance exam, he will definitely take her. The girl gets excited instantly, and he explains that he also knows some pretty safe hunting grounds. Then, she holds up her pinky, asking him to seal the deal with a promise. The young man sighs, satisfied to see his student's determination and enthusiasm, and so he seals their deal, linking his pinky with hers as night falls. With a determined smile, she asks him not to change his mind. Sang urges her to keep working hard, because this way, he knows she will manage to get into Jungkook University. A while later, the bedroom door opens, letting the light spill out. Jaehyun's mother is washing the dishes and is surprised to find that the lesson has already ended. She asks if the class went smoothly, and the protagonist confirms that everything went perfectly. Jaehyun has her ear pressed against the door, listening to her mother and her tutor talk about her. He is praising her. The woman offers Sam to stay for dinner, but he replies that he has an engagement and that he will be back on Monday. Upon hearing this, the girl gets flustered and collapses on the bed, dreamily hugging a teddy bear, thinking about a date with him, forming a small flame in her hand. She comments that her tutor is a hunter, and thanks to that, their conversation today turned out to be excellent. At first, she didn't like the idea, because he was an acquaintance of her father, but now she has completely changed her mind. She starts to remember her tutor's smile, and her heart begins to pound. He is kind, considerate, and to top it all off, she thinks he is an exceptional teacher. The girl also remembers the sincere smile Sam sometimes gives her during their classes, hugging her teddy bear tightly as she blushes. She thinks that he is also quite handsome, but suddenly the young woman's expression changes completely. She blushes and sighs, then sits down in her chair, with a more serious and resolute posture, and decides to study with greater diligence. The night is calm and silent. The sky is completely dark, and our protagonist is at the hunter base. He is in an elevator, wondering if the corpse collection has already concluded. Junmo is already there waiting and is surprised to see the protagonist. Upon seeing his agent, Sam asks him if he was also at the location. Nearby, several men are carrying boxes. Junmo explains that he was supervising the collection process and asks Sam where he was. Sam explains that he was working as a tutor. A man carries a huge horned rabbit on his back. The agent comments that he has already summoned collection teams to numerous fields previously, but this is the first time he has called for such a considerable number of corpse collection teams. And just for horned rabbits, the total came to 352, and collecting all of them requires a large amount of personnel. Several men are working on it at this very moment. Junmo asks if Sang has checked the payment he sent him, but Sang replies that he hasn't seen it yet and will check it right now. And suddenly, that once modest bank account is now completely stuffed with cash. This leaves Sang with an expression on his face as if he just discovered that his abilities surpassed F rank. Therefore, he adjusted the payment to the 83% tier on the chart, which is a rate supposedly reserved for immense gratitude. Sang comments that he's not even E rank yet, but he thanks him enormously for the gesture. Someone who is nearby their conversation interrupts them. Sang, the clone, and Junmo turn their gaze toward the person who called out to them. The man has a rough appearance, a scar on his face, and asks in a rude manner if Junmo is his manager, pointing to the clone, who is still wearing his small cap and mask. The agent steps in front of the clone and asks who is inquiring. He claims to be a hunter whose prey has been stolen, and his expression shows clear displeasure. All the rabbits he had his sights on were snatched by the clone, so he claims that today's entire hunt should be credited to him. Placing a hand on the back of his neck, the smug guy says they should pay for it. Junmo looks a bit apprehensive. It's never pleasant to deal with these kinds of individuals. He whispers to Sang that it seems they chose the wrong spot, and Sang replies that he didn't know people like that existed. Bringing a hand to his chin, our protagonist begins to ponder what to do in this delicate situation. Then, very discreetly, he tells his agent that he has an idea. The shameless opportunist watches them as they talk and asks what they are whispering about, but holding out his hand, he claims to be a man of principle and that he will accept only 10% of the total payment, as if his soul had just left his body. Sang is left completely dumbfounded. The man asks if he's mocking him and if he thinks he looks like a clown. Sang places a hand on his clone's shoulder and tells the man not to worry, as he won't be back this way for several days. He tells his agent that they should leave, but the man gets irritated and refuses to back down, stating that he's not done yet. They both simply ignore the individual and walk past him, as Sang comments that they're heading to the nearest coffee shop. This causes the guy to become extremely enraged. The veins on his forehead start to bulge. Then he winds up for a powerful punch aimed directly at the protagonist, yelling at him not to ignore him. And swiftly, Sang orders number 1 to act. The clone's eyes glow like those of a newly activated robot, and the clone steps right in front of the punch that is about to hit the protagonist. The punch lands with its full force. He is thrown backward by the impact, and the man looks somewhat bewildered. The force of the punch was astonishing, and poor number 1 goes flying through the air, crashing into some boxes in his path like a pinball, and finally lands with a hard thud on his back with his arms spread out. The punch surely hurt his face, as you can see, scuff marks on his mask. The thug's attitude changes completely in that instant. He gets angry, claiming he didn't even hit him that hard. So Sang, taking advantage of the situation, pulls out his phone and starts recording everything, yelling about how cruel the man is. The protagonist yells, that people won't let it slide if they find out that someone acted so violently in a sacred hunting ground, and then the thug is left perplexed, looking around as the cleaning crew stares at him. Shouting at the top of his lungs, Sang says it would be a real shame if this video ended up on the Hunter network. The man's face is red with bulging veins. He's super nervous and completely speechless. Approaching him, the protagonist places a hand on his shoulder, looking totally convincing, with a sinister aura, then suggests that they should just go their separate ways. The man starts when, gritting his teeth in anger with very few options. Later, at a cozy cafe with some chairs outside, Sang is having a drink and asks, startled, about the guild, Hizang. Junmo believes the hunter who was looking for a fight earlier was a member of that guild, as the Hizang guild. It is so large, it has all kinds of people, including those brawling thugs. As the clone chugs his drink in one go, Sang asks how the agent knew the guy was from that guild. Junmo explains that from the moment he walked in, the man kept staring at him with a sinister look, and he believes that can only be the work of the Hizang guild. Sang says it could be a matter of revenge. They might have done it thinking that Sang's clone was another hunter hired by the JTM agency. The agent admits that hunters from the JTM agency don't last long and leave quickly, leaving only a few F-rankers behind. And even now, poor Junmo can't guarantee there won't be more sabotage from Jisung. But confidently, our boy says that he already knew all that, and still agreed to join them. This doesn't reassure the poor agent much, but he understands. Sang says he won't let those scoundrels threaten him like that, and adds that he has a plan to get stronger very quickly. The boy continues, chatting with his colleague, and the man seems impressed because the young man is quite clever. Their conversation goes on for a while. Time passes and they enjoy themselves at the cafe. And after a long discussion, the boy asks what the man thinks of his idea. With a somewhat stunned expression, Junmo says he had never thought of it that way. He jots it down in his little notebook and asks if 2 or 3 in the afternoon tomorrow would work, and the agreed-upon location will be the giant Hunter Market, a beautiful building. The Hunter Market is a gigantic building with colorful floors and everything a hunter could ever want. It deals in equipment, weapons, and has been active since the beginning. Everyone does their shopping there. However, a type of department store entered the market and took over most of this industry, as they had every piece of equipment a hunter could possibly desire. Sang is trying on an impressive suit of armor. That armor is made of titanium and protects against E-class monsters. Wearing the suit, our protagonist says it's very comfortable and light, and he loved it. On top of that, it also has a dagger strategically placed at his side. Pulling a sharp blade from it, the boy says that since he'll be using weapons, this is a great feature. So he asks for 2 more sets. They're identical to the armor he's wearing, and the seller quickly agrees. The boy leaves loaded with merchandise. He now has the power of money. The boy remembers that he also needed some skills. He's looking for a familiar skill, but he doesn't know if they'll be able to find it in this market. The agent tells them to check a store called Heritage. This store has several interesting items that look like those crystal balls witches use. The 2 of them start searching the display cases for what our boy wants, until Sang finally finds what he was looking for in a blue orb. The skill is called Familiar, and it allows the hunter to share their senses with their summons and pets, and, in addition to allowing many things, it also costs a fortune. Wondering if he really needed 2 kidneys, or if it was worth selling one to buy the skill, the boy puts his hand to his face. With a shameless look, he asks his agent for an advance. Poor Yunmo's eyes fill with tears, but he says he can try to lend him 51,000 won. Sam thanks him and says he can cover the rest of the amount with some installments. But despite risking his credit, the boy has a lot of faith that the skill will be useful and, with its help, they'll be able to make the money back in no time. So the 2 of them buy the expensive orb, and he takes it somewhere else. Our boy starts reading the device's instruction manual. There are 2 rules on how to activate the skill, for mana users and non-users. Since he doesn't know how to use mana, he uses a small remote control to turn the thing on, and places his hand very close to it so it's in contact with his body. He's a little apprehensive about whether this will work and trembles slightly, and, closing his eyes tightly, he decides to press the button on the remote control. An orange light starts coming out of the orb, illuminating the entire room. The light expands so much that it forms a huge explosion, and then the notification screen appears, announcing that the familiar skill has been created. This skill is at level 1 and shares senses with the chosen target. Sang looks at his hands with a perplexed expression. The skill orb disappears after all that explosion of light, and, clenching his fists, the protagonist can feel the power flowing through his veins. Gets up from the floor and calls his beloved and obedient clones. The 2 walk in perfect sync, approaching their master, already dressed for the mission. Wearing the armor he bought before, Sang looks at the two of them, an encouraging look, and tells them to begin. Before this, when the protagonist was chatting with his agent, he asked him what he thought of the hunt's results. He said the result was wonderful, and that he would have never expected such a result. Sang explains that the clones only have half of his stats, but one of them managed to catch more than 300 rabbits, and even when he ordered the clone to take a hit for him, it stepped in without any fear. It takes a lot of determination to not be afraid of taking a punch to the face, and Sang believes he would also be totally capable of hitting that bully if he wanted to. Junmo understands that the guy is saying that, even with lower stats, they have better control of their bodies. He confirms it and says he's going to use it to his advantage. The agent asks how he plans to do that, and he explains that first, he needs 2 places, training grounds, so he can practice his skills, long range and short range. They arrive at one of these training grounds, a burly instructor appears to greet them, and they also go to another shooting range to practice their aim, shooting at clay pigeons. The protagonist decides he's going to push the clones' training to the absolute limit so they can surpass their limits. Both the muscular instructor at the physical training ground and the old man at the shooting range are impressed by the clone's attitude. At the physical training ground, the clone wants to have a duel, and the master is worried about it. And at the shooting range, instead of using a shotgun as is customary, the other clone wants a pistol. Both clones have the same determined and brave look in their eyes, and they say they are sure. At the physical training ground, the clone grabs his batons and tells his opponent to get ready, and at the shooting range, the clone takes a real pistol, not a practice one. The shooting instructor is very wary of the situation and, holding a device, tells them to begin. Meanwhile, at the physical training ground, the instructor sent the craziest guy to fight the clone. The two begin their challenges. The crazy man lunges forward, and the clay pigeon flies into the sky with a super fast motion. The clone manages to snatch one of the staffs from the crazy opponent, and the other clone manages to hit the flying pigeon with a single pistol shot. The burly instructor's jaw is on the floor, unable to believe what he is seeing. Meanwhile, the shooting instructor looks like he has seen a ghost. The physical training clone is still in a combat stance, holding his staff attentively, and the shooter clone holds his gun, which is still smoking from the shot. We go back to Sang and Junmo's conversation, and he explains that is why he needs the family ability. The agent is surprised by this well-thought-out explanation. He still does not understand why the boy wants to share his vision with the clone, but Sang explains that it is not just for his vision. Sang explains that it is important to remember that the other senses will also be connected. Imagine if he uses his ability while the clones are practicing, shooting, or fighting. At that moment, the boy closes his eyes and tries to concentrate as hard as he can, and then activates his family ability. The aura around the boy turns neon blue, and you can even see energy. It is like a huge burst in his senses, and he begins to experience many sensations. He can see his clone that is fighting with the staff, and he can also see the wild opponent approaching with all his might. The protagonist can see the fight from a distance as it happens in real time. He can control the angle of his joints and the balance of his body to dodge attacks, and, with that, the clone manages to avoid the blow with ninja-like reflexes. The movement of the muscles and the flow of strength are also controlled by Sang. Additionally, he also controls the breathing while preparing the shot. This makes his clone's aim and skill infinitely better. The aim and line of sight are also strategically modified. The clay pigeon seems to move in slow motion, making it much easier to hit, and Sang can do all this for every single one of his movements. The clone, in his entirety, is still with his eyes closed, concentrating on every movement. Now he slowly opens his eyes, returning to his reality, and, with a determined smile, he knows that now he can handle them all while using the familiar skill. The aura around him forms a blue flame. Convinced it was a fantastic deal, he looks at his hand, proud of his ability. The experiences he had just had were magnificent, like the rush of air when the opponent's staff whizzed past his face, or the smell of gunpowder and the recoil from the gun he fired. And he can even feel the fatigue his clones must be feeling. But he didn't move at all. He just shared their senses and was able to experience the movements of his clones, who have bodies identical to his own, so it's as if he could imitate any of those movements right now. A status screen suddenly appears, notifying him that his strength and cooldown time have increased. He decides to reconnect with number 1 and see who he's fighting. Again, he closes his eyes and begins to concentrate to activate the ability. Sang, once again, unleashes his blazing blue aura, releasing his power. We can see several punching bags around the place. He is just transported to the gym, where number 1 is in a battle stance, holding his staffs and looking at his opponent. This opponent also uses 2 staffs. It's that man in the kimono, who looks like one of the strongest fighters. Sang can see that this opponent could be quite a challenge. The other students of the dojo are surprised to see that the coach is going to fight personally. Both opponents get ready to start the fight. Number 1 begins the battle with a precise strike, which immediately knocks away one of the coach's weapons. The blow is extremely powerful, unbalancing the muscular coach, and in his thoughts, the big guy believes that he lacks experience with staffs in his attacks, but his defense is different. It seems he's able to predict every attack. This worries the coach, and he begins to focus more. The veins on his face bulge, and with that, he manages to land a direct hit on the clone's staff. This causes the clone to feel the impact, and his arms tremble slightly. He lifts his arm with phenomenal strength that even scares the instructor. The 2 opponents bring their faces close in a sinister glare. The instructor is astonished by the strength of the attack, and by his ability to copy his move in an instant. Things are looking bad for the big guy, who starts to worry about his chances of winning the challenge, so he unleashes a last resort move with his arms, but the clone manages to dodge it. The crowd goes wild, unable to believe he managed to dodge it, and, taking advantage of the instructor's open guard, he makes his move. He manages to land the blow which impacts the staff, but it also affects the man's shoulder. Shocked, the instructor feels the impact of the attack as if smoke were coming from his staff. He realizes he has also been cornered. The wall is right behind him. Seeing that he has the advantage, number 1 already prepares his next attack, but the instructor hasn't shown all the tricks up his sleeve yet, and using the wall as support, manages to do a backflip and dodge the strike from above. This move greatly impresses Sang, whose eyes open wide. The muscular man lands from his jump, right behind the protagonist's clone. With glazed eyes and ultra-focused on his movements, he is still ready. The students there are proud of their coach, but they know it was a close call. Meanwhile, poor Sang feels the result of his last attack, an unbearable pain in his wrist. As he gets up, the coach says that last blow was very dangerous. He asks number 1 if he still wants to continue. Through his thoughts, Sang asks his clone if he is okay, and the copy lowers its head, its face hidden by its cap. In an extraordinary leap, he performs the exact same move as the coach, using the wall to propel himself. This leaves the other students present completely speechless, and the coach as well, who doesn't even know where to look. Sang speaks with his clone again through his thoughts, asking him if he is going to continue. Number 1 finishes his jump exactly as the coach did, with a successful landing and holding his staff near his face. He politely asks to go again. Smiling, the coach accepts the challenge, preparing his staffs. Sang has seen enough there, and decides to switch to number 2. A blue aura forms around the clone, activating the skill. The target shattered in midair, turning into small fragments. A well-dressed blonde man laughs and asks if his darling saw that. A woman with long black hair claps and says yes, calling him honey. Sam prefers to stay quiet so as not to offend anyone, but he finds the whole scene quite embarrassing. He notices that number 2 is so focused that he's even shooting at the targets, the people next to him, and decides to let it go and just focus on the shot. The well-dressed man asks for more targets. Now it's number 2's turn, and he gets into position on the shooting range. Sang makes sure his upper body is stable and readies his aim. He knows he needs to keep his body still and only pivot following the target's trajectory, and then when the sight and the supposed trajectory line up, he'll get ready to pull the trigger, and so the clay pigeon shatters. Another point for our skilled shooter, the gun lets out a puff of smoke after the shot. Number 2 continues to observe the result of his skilled shot. Sang tells him to always remember every detail with a determined and ready look. The number 2 shooter is on fire. The sky is already turning orange as the sun begins to set. Sang is focused, his blue aura, flaming, indicates he's using his family's ability. He opens his eyes with a serious and unfriendly expression. The boy is completely exhausted, as switching between number 1 and number 2 is taking a huge toll on him. Looking at his own hand, he starts to see everything spin, his mana has been depleted, and he's starting to feel very dizzy. Now it's time to rest. Now the protagonist is sitting on a bench. The clone's movements are quite wild, as they don't feel fear or hesitation, they just charge forward. Next time he wants to go with them to test what might happen if he tries it himself. Someone approaches the spot where Sam is sitting. A very familiar girl with purple hair passes by. It's Hyun, and she recognizes him and immediately calls out to him. The protagonist is surprised to run into her, there by chance, worried. He asks her what she's doing there so late at night, and she explains that she was at the library. He's suspicious of her, but she angrily says she was doing her homework. Some strange men are watching them. A strange, tough-looking man is smoking a cigarette, as he asks if this is the guy the other one was talking about. The three of them look like they're straight out of a mob movie, all with gangster faces. Someone is on the phone, and the voice on the other end of the line asks if he just let Kang Junmo go. It's the man who was trying to bribe Sang earlier and, terrified, he says he was trying to intimidate him, but someone was filming. The voice on the phone yells, asking if the incident was filmed, but then tells him to forget it, not to say anything, and not to even go near the Ujang sandfield. The voice adds that, even if something happens, he must say he has nothing to do with his own guild, and finally tells him to pretend he's just a street thug and hangs up. The man becomes enraged and throws his phone against the wall with all his might, cursing the person on the other end of the line. Filled with rage, he stomps on the phone on the ground, still shouting all sorts of curses like a madman as he mercilessly stomps on the device. He asks if the guy knows who he's dealing with, but while he's throwing his tantrum, a voice behind him asks why he's so angry. It's Hyun Suk Hyung, a big, evil-looking guy, accompanied by a man with long, straight hair. The big guy's smile is sinister, and he looks like a very dangerous person. There are some cigarette butts on the ground. What a slob. The three of them are so strange and intimidating that people passing by prefer to walk around them. Hyung calls the guy kid, and says he knew this would happen when he joined the #1 guild in the country. Trembling, he asks if there's still work for him, and says the guild told him not to go near the Ruminada, Ujang-san field. Hyung turns to the long-haired guy named Chang-won. He says he might have some part-time work for the man, but as they talk, he casually notices Sam and Hyung nearby. The two of them are chatting calmly a few feet away. The guy with the scar points to Sam and says that he's the bastard who recorded the video. Smiling, the big guy tells him to calm down, saying he got way out of hand. Leaning against a pillar, he starts to watch. John approaches his colleague and also watches the protagonist and the girl. Sang looks super relaxed and at ease as they talk. John asks his master what he's doing there, and he says he's just working out. A voice interrupts. The teacher and students chat. Someone approaches stepping on a cigarette butt and says he heard his little brother owes him something. It's the three gangster-looking guys approaching them. The girl asks who they are, and Sang says he's never seen anyone fatter, but then he sees that annoying guy with the scar is among them. Sang then recognizes him and immediately starts thinking about his clones. The protagonist stands in front of the girl and asks how he can help them, and the guy with the scar immediately turns red, making a disgusted face. But before he can throw a tantrum, his chubby friend tells him to relax, and explains that he's there because he heard Sang has a video of his brother making a mistake while he was a little too worked up. The big guy asks him to delete the video and then they'll leave in peace. Sang raises his phone and asks if everything will be okay between them if he deletes the video. He holds his phone, aiming it at the guys, and asks if there's any guarantee that they'll actually let him go if he deletes the video. The burly guy brings a hand to his mouth, letting out a very sarcastic smirk, and says he acknowledges that Sang is not an idiot and that, indeed, they won't let him go unharmed. He adds that the protagonist wasn't smart enough to delete the video when he filmed it, so it makes no difference now. Speaking in a very low voice, the boy tells Yang to wait for the right moment and run, and retorts to the guys, saying that, of course, there is a difference. The boy is scared and didn't imagine he'd get into such a tough situation so soon, but he gets into a fighting stance, and says the difference is that he's going to give the three of them a beating. Hyung laughs and admires the young man's confidence as Chung-won rushes at him, and the big guy orders his goons to rough him up a little. Sang. The protagonist manages to dodge the first punch, but it's 2 against 1 and it's not going to be easy. And the long-haired guy manages to land a blow right on the poor boy's head, while the other guy delivers a solid kick. Feeling the impact of the blows, our protagonist is in serious trouble, and before he can recover, another punch lands, her chin tightly, extremely worried. John cries out for his master, unable to help him. The boy falls to the ground after taking so many hits. He's badly injured and realizes things aren't going so well in his first fight. The brave girl stands in front of him, and in her fingers, a light begins to charge up. The light takes the form of a ball in her hand, and she yells at the three of them to stay back. Getting up with difficulty, Sank looks at his student who is trying to defend him, but then he takes a closer look and notices something that worries him. The young woman is trying, but she's trembling badly. The two gangsters realize that she's an awakened one, and they aren't too happy about it. The huge guy pushes the other two aside and asks if they're afraid of a mere high school girl, and he confronts the girl, asking her what will happen if they don't back down. The big guy shows no mercy and gets closer to her, intimidating her. But before he can get any closer, the girl yells at him to stay away and unleashes her energy. The man's huge, flabby body closes in on her. The girl starts to tremble in fear, gritting her teeth in worry, and in a somewhat clumsy manner, she unleashes a strike with her hand. The strike flies towards the big guy's bloated belly and hits him. This impact creates an explosion that echoes through the area, kicking up a lot of dust and smoke. The other two gangsters are worried about Hyung and shout his name. The smoke begins to clear after a moment. Hyung is still intact and says that, in the first place, awakened ones are extremely common, and she shouldn't be bragging about it. The only damage the huge guy took was to his clothes, which are now torn and reveal sinister tattoos. He raises his massive arm, preparing a slap, and tells Jaeyeon to grow up. But just as the attack is about to hit her, Sang jumps in front of her with hatred in his eyes. He tells the big guy that the fight between them isn't over yet, and with all his might, he lands a punch right in Hyung's face. Since his guard is down, his arms fly back, revealing an awakens bracelet. Hyung notices this and is shocked by this information. Our protagonist is giving it his all in this unfair 3-on-1 battle. Hyung. He feels the effects of that solid punch to the face and groans in pain. Sang stays on guard, and the big guy is furious about what just happened. He thinks that he needs to recall the memories of Clone Number 1, and what the clone saw wasn't the opponent's staff. The boy needs to look at the enemy's shoulder and move in anticipation to dodge the attacks. He knows that an attack isn't just about moving your arms. Wildly, it's something that changes the body's structure, involving muscles from the legs to the waist, and from the waist to the arms in a complex and coordinated movement. Being more calculating and observant, Sang manages to land another effective blow on his opponent. But he sees that he won't be able to dodge the next punch and that Hyung is going to hit him. So instead of trying to dodge, he lands a double punch right in the guy's stomach. Sang is tired and out of breath, but his opponent is in much worse shape, writhing in pain. The protagonist's face is a little swollen from the hits he took earlier, wiping his thumb across his disgusting greasy lips. John says the kid knows how to fight, and now with his eyes glowing red, he says he was hesitant to hit someone who doesn't even know how to throw a punch. Sang still feels the pain from the last attack, but he holds his ground. He realizes that he managed to hit him last time, but the guy is really strong. He wonders if he has some kind of strength-enhancing ability. Knowing this, he thinks it's best not to let him land a single blow. The big guy charges forward with an evil smile on his face. Sang uses his agility and quick, thinking to hit him before he can get close enough. The punch landed squarely on the big guy's face. With a swollen and bruised face, Hyung is not happy about this and curses at the protagonist, then swings his arms at the boy, trying to hit him no matter what. Sang manages to jump out of the way and hits him again. He knows he needs a powerful blow to cause significant damage. As soon as he lands, the big man prepares to hit him again, but Sang doesn't miss a beat and punches the big guy's large face once more. Chang-won is nearby, still crouching on the ground, watching everything and cheering for his friend. The protagonist is so focused that he can't see anything else. He is 100% focused on the battle. Absolutely furious, Hyung can't stand taking any more punches to the face and starts drooling with rage. His body starts turning redder and his tattoos seem to stand out even more. The arm he's preparing to strike with seems to have grown in size and he's about to attack Sang. Our boy knows this next punch will be extremely powerful and he has to dodge it, but to his surprise, a treacherous hand grabs his foot as he prepares to move. He looks down and sees it's Chang-won, cowardly holding his foot so he can't dodge. Now the boy is in a tough spot. He won't be able to jump or move his body, completely out of the way, and the giant unleashes all his rage in a tremendous punch, right into Sang's stomach. He suffers immensely from this attack, as if a rhinoceros had gored him in the belly. Jae-jeon is devastated, she screams, "No," as her eyes widen with worry. This attack sends our boy flying into a nearby wall. He hunches over and clutches his stomach, struggling to breathe, but it's incredibly difficult to take a breath. The blow was too powerful. Trying to stay calm, he knows he needs to regulate his breathing. His eyes remain fixed on his opponent, refusing to be defeated. But Hyung isn't done yet and prepares another punch with his giant arm. The impact is tremendous, and a cloud of black smoke suddenly rises, but it's Hyung who is suffering the consequences of the impact. His eyes turn white, and he gasps for air. Sang looks at his opponent, not fully understanding what's happening, and the one responsible for this is Hye-eon, who is in a fighting stance with her hand raised. The other two thugs are on the ground, cursing the girl because no one expected this. She turns to them and they yell that she should have left and that she's an idiot. But out of nowhere, the clones appear and start attacking the two cheaters. The girl is surprised, but also very relieved. One of the clones is right beside her, wearing a mask. Hyung gets distracted by the sound of the fight behind him and looks back to see what's happening. But Sang gets the big guy's attention. He wipes the cut on his face and says he can finally breathe properly. Now, the burly guy charges at the protagonist with hatred in his eyes, and our boy looks very confident right now. He uses the same technique he used against the instructor at the training camp, using the wall as a foothold to dodge, and as he comes down he passes by the big guy and thanks him for serving as a practice dummy. And with the momentum he gained, he lands a phenomenal kick right on the giant's head. After that elaborate move, Zhang sits on the ground, panting and exhausted. But he's in much better shape than the big guy, who is completely wrecked on the ground. His friends aren't in a much better situation either. A status screen appears, and Zhang has gained muscle strength, speed, stamina, and dexterity. Additionally, his cloning skill has temporarily leveled up. He can now make 3 clones. With his face all beaten up, our boy laughs, seeing that he's gotten stronger, and, as soon as he relaxes a bit, his body gives out and he collapses on the ground. The 2 clones and Jae Young come running to see if he's okay, but Sam is smiling, feeling victorious. Later that night, the city is all lit up by the streetlights and houses. Jae Young's hand is bandaged, and Sam asks her why she didn't run when she had the chance. She says that if she hadn't been there to help him, it would have been much worse, and he confirms it with a shaky voice. The girl says she was surprised, because she didn't think the famous Supreme Hunter was Sang's clone. The clone gets cocky and proud, and the protagonist walks up to him. He asks her not to go around telling people, and she asks why, wondering if he doesn't want to be famous. Sang says it might attract negative attention, so she promises her lips are sealed. They arrive at the girl's house and she seems a little disappointed, wanting to talk more. The protagonist asks her if her hand is okay and if she'll be able to hold a pen, but she shows him it was her left hand. She playfully asks if it wouldn't be a good idea to reduce her homework since she's injured, but he asks her if she didn't already finish it all at the library. Annoyed, the girl laments that he has such a good memory at times like these. Sang puts a hand to his face and thanks his student for everything she did for him today. He believes he only won it because she stopped his opponent at just the right moment. Blushing, the young woman says she played a very important role today. She teases him, saying she should thank him with a meal, not on an empty stomach, basically inviting herself to dinner. Looking at him with a very determined gaze, Sam says that taking her to dinner will be a promise. The two say their goodbyes, and the girl enters her house, pleased. He says he'll make sure his student eats plenty of meat, and continues on his way satisfied. But the 2 clones are staring at him with wide eyes. The protagonist feels like he's being watched and gets a little uncomfortable, telling them to stop slacking off and get back to work. But they explain that it's already late, and the training grounds are closed, so the boy bends down and picks up a stick. Giving them a cute smile, he hands the sticks to his clones, and says they can train in the park. Meanwhile, 1 month later, we're on the street where Agent Junmo works. He's talking on the phone with Sam, asking him how the plan is going. The boy replies that it was a success. The protagonist is with his clones and says that he can now hit a target with a pistol and can also create a 3rd clone. Junmo asks if this means he can learn things even faster, and looking at his status screen, we can see how much he has evolved in that time. He tells his agent that he has a surprise for him, although it's a bit sudden. He asks if Junmo can get 3 E-rank hunting grounds by tomorrow. Proudly, the agent says he will get them, no matter what, leaving Sam very satisfied. He asks about the schedule, and the boy replies that he'll have them exercise in the morning and hunt in the afternoon. Hanging up his call with the agent, he looks at his 3 clones and decides that one will train the upper body, another the lower body, and the 3rd will do cardio. He tells them to go to the park and to make sure they are back by 12 o'clock sharp. The 3 clumsy clones almost take out their weapons for a stroll, and he yells at them to leave them at home. Meanwhile, Sam analyzes a monster hunting plan on his computer. He reflects that the clones have learned very well and can copy and recreate almost anything. So if he studies the monster's characteristics and how to hunt them, it will be incredibly easy for the clones. Our protagonist then starts watching several online tutorials on how to fight monsters. The videos even explain which weapons to use and how to achieve greater success. The next day, we return to our cloning hero's house. The clones are returning just as their master had asked, with huge dark circles under their eyes. The guy had stayed up all night and didn't even realize it was already noon, as he's dying of exhaustion. His clones are full of energy, and he tells them to shower and go eat. As the clones take off their armor, he thinks about the various monsters he has already researched. He decides to analyze each one's hunting progress and learn about mana. During the break, Zank receives a message from his agent, who says he'll be at his house in 10 minutes. The clones are stuffing themselves when he tells them they need to get ready after they finish eating. The agent and the guy meet at the entrance of the building, as planned. The three prepared clones emit a terrifying aura that both Junmo and Sang notice. The efficient agent managed to secure 3 training grounds, all located close to each other. Our protagonist thanks him and asks him to look after the clones. Because this time he isn't going, he decides to participate using his familiar skill and is going to train his mana breathing technique. The car starts and they're ready to begin the mission. Sang puts his hands on his hips, ready to start doing his part. The guy puts on some background music with instructions to help him concentrate better. He breathes slowly, performing all his movements with great caution. Sitting in a cross-legged position, a blue aura surrounds him, and he is completely focused. The instructions say it's good to remember what he feels when he uses his skill, and he begins to focus on that. He remembers that when he used the familiar skill, he felt as if energy were leaving his body. With his eyes closed, he breathes and feels the energy circulating through his body. His breathing is completely controlled, following the voice from the audio instructions. Then, he starts to feel something different in his chest. It's as if all the energy is concentrating in the center of his body, flowing slowly. His body is like a universe filled with infinite constellations of power. Abruptly, he opens his eyes, feeling this whole sensation, and then a status window appears. He has received the meditation skill, which increases mana recovery. Meanwhile, in a hunting ground, an injured man crawls on the ground, surrounded by several dead monsters. The warrior is seriously injured and doesn't understand how such a strong monster could be in an E-rank dungeon. A creature with extremely sharp teeth is chewing on the remains of an alien fish. The injured man says he needs to report this to the authorities urgently. This monster seems to be much stronger than this area should allow. Desperate, the man looks at the reflection in his bracelet and realizes there's a monster's shadow right behind him. The cursed creature quickly approaches, ready to end the poor man's life. A terrifying scream can be heard even from outside the dungeon. Junmo's car door opens. He arrives at the last hunting ground he could find for the clones. The agent explains that this location has alien fish, and they are known for their powerful jaws. One of the clones closes the car door and Junmo tells him to be careful during the hunt. He takes out his cell phone and informs Sang that he has dropped off the 3 of them at their respective locations. Excited, Junmo thinks that the fact that someone can hunt in 3 different places at once is truly extraordinary, and depending on the results of this hunt, the hunter industry might start to cause a stir. Meanwhile, back at Sang's house, he feels quite smug, because he has already obtained the mana breathing skill, but he soon makes a sad puppy face when he discovers that mana breathing and meditation are different skills. Scratching the back of his neck, he thinks that it's harder to get the mana breathing skill, and then he grabs his phone and sees the message from the agent letting him know the clones have arrived. Concentrating, he decides to use his to see how the clones are doing. We see a giant rat being hit, right on its huge teeth. The sight startles our protagonist, who can't help but let out a scream. It's clone number 1, hunting this absolutely disgusting rat, apparently. There haven't been any problems with the hunt so far. The guides were a great help. Other disgusting rats pounce. Sang decides to observe and see if the guides were really useful. He remembers what he saw in the tutorial, that the rats are one of the most annoying F-rank monsters. The man explaining about the rats says he suggests hunting them in groups, but when you have no choice but to go alone, there are other ways to do it. First, since they charge in a straight line, it's a good idea to keep your distance and shoot, and that's exactly what number 1 does. He keeps his distance and just keeps shooting, but when it's not possible to kill them all with gunfire, you'll have to engage in melee combat. The rats' skulls are very hard, so it's necessary to attack a different spot. The best option is to aim for their spine, and the clone does exactly that, and the rat is hit dead on, being eliminated instantly. But, just like common rats, they are very good at reproducing, so their numbers are huge. The instructor adjusts his glasses and says that if you've studied correctly, they're nothing more than experience points. But some guy in the video yells that it's not easy to aim for a moving spine. However, the clone is focused and ready for any challenge. Bullet casings fly through the air as he keeps shooting at his targets. His shots hit the creature's spine dead on, and they are eliminated, without much trouble. In a hunting ground with several sand dunes, the clone is on the move. One of the sand dunes moves abruptly, almost like an earthquake. A huge scorpion appears. The clones possess the same techniques as their master, but they don't feel surprise or fear. They hunt without considering their opponent's level and without being intimidated by the difference in strength. The clone emerges victorious against the scorpion, firmly wielding his weapon. and Sang experiences the hunt using his familiar skill. Countless status windows appear endlessly, with all the victories of the copies. In another field, the other determined clone is hunting alien fish. As Sang's stats increase, the clones also get stronger. The protagonist sets a goal for the day: to clear the F-class monster fields with the help of his powerful clones. In the hunting ground, footsteps slowly approach. Two hunters talk about how extremely quiet the place is today and that they haven't found a single monster yet. They approach a strange object up ahead, wondering what it could be. It's a huge pile of monster corpses. One of them asks how much all of that would be worth, and they decide to put it all in boxes. The day is clear, with few clouds in the sky, very pleasant weather. A clone holds its weapon, surrounded by the corpses of already eliminated monsters. Sang knows the hunt is going very well, but he feels like he's forgotten something important, and then he goes into a total panic upon remembering Hyuk. He remembers the cleaning staff collecting the corpses of horned rabbits, and he realizes he hasn't collected anything he's hunted so far. Knowing this, he decides to send an order for the 3 clones to drop everything they're doing and go collect all the corpses. But he wonders if someone has already done it for them, and he can't help but shed a few tears of regret. Something suddenly comes to mind, like a flash of inspiration. He notices there are alien and fish corpses that number 3 isn't collecting, but the clone says he wasn't the one who hunted them. But the greedy Sang explains that now is not the time to be honest, and that each one of them is worth good money. Number 3 approaches some of the fish corpses to collect them. It's a pretty disgusting scene, because whoever hunted them chopped them up like baby food. But while number 3 is collecting the bodies, he notices something strange. He finds something else inside one of them. It's not part of the fish, and he asks if he should take it. When Sang sees it, he is horrified and his eyes go wide. That's a human arm, that's already starting to decompose. But while he is digging through the dead monsters, something moves behind number 3, and he notices the movement. Sang also notices the movement and warns that something is out there. The clone grabs his weapon, stands up, alert to his surroundings, as it could be an enemy or someone trying to steal the corpses, and behind him, a strange noise catches his attention. An alien fish head falls in front of him, chopped up just like the other parts, and behind number 3, a sea monster, resembling an eel, is lurking. He realizes that the fish head was bait. Since number 3 is no fool, he realizes it's an ambush, and he quickly turns around, but before he can do anything, his arm is ripped off like a Lego piece without any effort. Poor number 3 is confused. He feels a rush of different emotions and immense pain. But this is where we see the downsides of using a familiar skill, because someone else is also feeling all of this. Sand screams as if the world were ending, feeling an unbearable pain in his arm, as if he had lost it himself. And then the familiar skill disconnects. He wakes up as if from a terrible nightmare, scared and trembling. The boy looks at his arm to make sure it's still there. Fortunately, he still has his arm and can move it normally. That experience was so horrible and traumatic for our protagonist that he can't move. He's huddled in a corner of his house. A little calmer now. He realizes that the skill's connection was unintentionally severed due to the pain, but he knows this is no time to reflect. He grabs his phone and quickly starts calling his agent. Junmo answers the phone quickly, and the protagonist asks which hunting ground number 3 went to. The agent notices that Sang's voice doesn't sound right, and tells him he went to the sewage treatment plant in Incheon. Desperate, he asks Junmo to take number 1 and number 2 there right now. He says he's also on his way, and that he'll explain everything when he gets there. And to briefly summarize the whole explanation, he says there's a really big problem. Poor number 3 is completely wrecked. He's missing an arm and has other wounds all over his body. This monster he's fighting isn't just a sea monster, but a humanoid creature that can wield a sword. Our poor number 3 can't take it anymore. The beating was too violent and he ends up losing consciousness, and falls before that marine aberration, which watches with a sinister and expressionless face. Sang slams the car door in a great hurry, taking a taxi to get to the hunting ground. As quickly as possible, scared, he's sweating as if he just ran a marathon and is out of breath. The place is huge, filled with gigantic wastewater treatment machines. Our protagonist realizes that he has been disconnected from his clone number 3, and, unfortunately, he still has to wait a long time before he can use the skill again. The guards of the place ask him to show his identification bracelet. He does so, and passes through the block. To the boy's relief, the agent is already there. They meet up. He also managed to bring clones number 1 and number 2. Sang then explains that number 3 has disappeared, and, before that, he saw a very strong monster there that wasn't an alien fish. The monster had the head of a fish, but the arms and legs of another monster. Yunmo's eyes go wide at this description. Very worried, he explains that they will need to alert the authorities and temporarily close the area, because that monster is known as the Fishmen and is D rank. Even a full party of E-class hunters would be no match for this atrocity. Sang asks him to alert the guards to prevent other hunters from entering, but not right now. He orders him to do it only after his clones have crossed the portal, which leaves Yunmo perplexed, scratching the back of his neck. Sang says they can't just sit around waiting for the creature to die, smiling. With a confident look, he asks his agent to trust him as much as he trusts his clones. But Yunmo isn't too worried about this. The protagonist then closes his eyes and concentrates, activating the familiar skill. The skill reaches his remaining clones, number 1 and number 2. They are inside the hunting ground, in a dense forest, walking very carefully. Sang orders them to go first to the location where number 3 disappeared. The 2 clones are very well prepared and focused, ready for battle. They manage to communicate using gestures and signals to avoid making any noise. A disgusting sound of teeth tearing through flesh and cartilage can be heard nearby. The 2 have found the creature. It's eating an unfortunate alien fish. This is great for our protagonist, who never imagined he'd be lucky enough to strike first. He knows his stats are those of an E-class hunter, but since his clones only receive 53% of them, they are, at best, F-class. But the creature isn't in a normal state right now, and he also needs to consider his clones' hunting abilities. Deep down in his heroic heart, he believes it's actually possible. The boy then orders his clones to aim for the monster's head, so they start firing, determined to kill this abomination. The bullets hit the big fish's head, but they aren't strong enough to pierce its skin. The unlucky clones are left with looks of utter amazement. Sang is just as confused. He then realizes that the bullets have no effect. That initial hail of bullets only serves to annoy the abominable, toothy monster, and after roaring, the beast leaps like a flea, reaching several meters into the air, and comes crashing down, right between the 2 clones who barely manage to escape. One of the clones uses its dodge to pull off a different move, somersaulting over the monster's head, slicing its sword across the shoulder, and managing to open a small wound on the big fish's skin. Sang is shocked. The sword only made a small scratch, and the monster isn't letting it slide. It turns towards the clone, preparing an attack. The attack hits a tree, as the clone was fast enough to dodge it just in the nick of time. Since the beast is so large, it finds it difficult to swing its sword among so many trees. Meanwhile, the other clone keeps firing. The monster's sword gets stuck in the tree. That's how powerful the attack was. But the fish monster uses a bit more force and shatters the tree without much trouble. Sang warns his clones to forget what he said. The beast can definitely use its sword on this terrain. The tree trunk crashes to the ground, making a huge noise. This monster seems to be more challenging than our protagonist had imagined. But his clones feel no fear or worry, charging forward with all their courage. They manage to hit the monster on the arm, but it has no effect. Sang is watching everything and realizes that these attacks aren't working. The huge monster clenches its jaw, gathering all its strength in its arm, ready to throw a punch, and the punch hits one of the clones. The protagonist is worried, wondering how they're going to defeat this thing with such ineffective attacks, but then, he starts to remember that the bullets did have some effect. One bullet bounced off, but the other caused some damage, even if it was small. He comes up with the idea of aiming for the exact wound it caused and trying to shoot there again with his skill. He manages to hit the exact spot and the monster feels it. Sang realizes it was a brilliant idea, and so now he knows the plan: fill the big fish with bullets. Despite being wounded, the beast is still going strong and attacks them with a punch. Both of them manage to dodge by jumping, and they continue unloading their ammo on the monster, which starts to look like a piece of Swiss cheese full of small holes and begins to scream, showing that the attacks are effective. The big fish then grips its sword even tighter, and a flame erupts along its entire blade, turning it into a flaming sword. The monster's eyes are red and full of hatred. It's enraged, and so it prepares an attack on the clone with its flaming sword. The clone manages to block the sword strike with his arm, but that attack was incredibly strong, and he felt the full impact. Suddenly, the beast became much stronger. It starts swinging its sword from side to side, trying to hit the clones as if swatting flies. Sang wonders if the sword is the reason it got stronger, that it's reacting to its body. The protagonist believes this means the monster is severely wounded and has given itself a temporary power-up. Meanwhile, the clone fearlessly strikes the monster's chest, causing a wound. But the monster fish doesn't back down and charges at the clone with everything it's got, and it manages to hit him with a sword strike right in the middle of his stomach. Sang is in shock by this. and he too ends up experiencing that horrible pain firsthand. The clone grabs the hand that drove the sword into his stomach, holding it tight. With a trembling voice, Sang says he knew this wouldn't end well, but it's necessary, and the clone grabs a dagger and, with that dagger, prepares a strike with all his might, screaming at the top of his lungs as he lunges forward and stabs its chest of the enormous monster several times in 3 different places, taking advantage of his proximity to the beast. But the beast decides to return the favor and prepares an attack with its claws. But the clone is at his peak strength and determination and manages to deflect the attack with his arm, and fueled by that flame of determination, he continues his assault. The great fish no longer has the upper hand and looks for a way to get away from the clone. With its gigantic foot, it prepares its next move, raising it towards the boy and lands the kick squarely, pushing the clone away from its wounded body. The boy clutches the wound in his stomach, trying to hold on a little longer. But the monster is not done yet and charges again with its flaming sword. However, the other clone throws himself in front of the attack, in a heroic display of teamwork and, before the great fish could land its deadly attack, he pounces on the villain with his dagger. The moment is tense, and the distance between the fighters is dangerously short. Many blows are about to be exchanged, but the clones, in a swift and intelligent move, manage to strike the great fish's body at the same time. That blow was enough for the monstrous amphibian to feel the full force of their teamwork and, with its enormous body, gravely wounded and more riddled with holes than Swiss cheese, the enemy is no longer so vigorous. It falls to its knees, making a loud thud, as its body is very heavy, and finally collapses, completely face down on the ground, defeated on the battlefield. The clones are tremendously wounded, but victorious. They are so exhausted they can't take another step. One of them collapses flat on the ground. The one on the ground looks at his weapon. The bullets are gone. It was enough for today's hunt. They are so exhausted that Sam feels like he is going to die. Meanwhile, the clone notices something. Footprints have formed, on the ground, made from all the red liquid that was splashed everywhere. The clone's eyes go wide, as if he had just seen the most terrifying ghost of his life. Apparently, that abomination is not dead. Sam orders number 2 to follow those tracks, but he realizes that the tracks are heading in one direction, towards the portal entrance. Now, outside the hunting ground, a guard informs a hunter that a monster has appeared, so he won't be able to enter. The man complains that he wasted his time choosing his team, but the guard insists it's impossible for them to participate. Junmo observes the scene and thinks that Sang needs to hurry up. Then he hears a strange noise coming from nearby, and the local guards realize that something strange happened in the portal and call to gather the forces and inform the chief. The monster Sang was fighting appears, heading quickly towards the portal. It's filled with fury and has no patience. To get them out of the way, it prepares an attack aimed at the guards. The security guards try to shoot to prevent the thing from getting closer to the portal, but instead of stopping it, the bullets have no effect, and it begins to transform its sword. And the large beast manages to reach the portal, attacking the guards who are no match for it. Still inside the hunting ground, clone number 2 is determined to follow the escaping creature. He readies the weapon in his hand, preparing to throw it, and hurls it, with all his might at the monstrous amphibian's back. Meanwhile, from inside the portal, Sang emerges, wielding a knife, and also lunges at the beast, using all his strength. He charges at the creature and manages to plunge the knife right into the monster's head, very close to its eye. This makes the beast scream, in pain, and the soldiers standing around are paralyzed, watching the terrifying scene. Sang gathers all his physical strength into his arms and uses both of them to drive the knife even deeper. The soldiers look like they've seen a ghost, with his mouth agape and his eyes bulging. Our protagonist manages to take down the enormous beast, which falls on its back with him still on top of it. Overcome with emotion, number 2 raises his thumb and can't hold back his tears. A man with a goatee is on the phone, saying that he has arrived. He's wearing a bulletproof vest and states that he will send a detailed report right after the investigation. Slowly approaching a crowd, he notices something unusual. That D-rank monster is on the ground unconscious, and its body is severely injured. The man who just arrived recognizes this monster as the fishman. One of the soldiers asks the man if he's from the association, and he confirms it, asking what happened there. Still a bit shaken, the soldier explains that a hunter who was inside the portal before it closed hunted this monster. The man, confused, asks if there was a D-rank hunter there, but the soldier just says that it was a hunter who defeated the beast. Frowning, the man asks what happened. They are investigating further, but as far as they know, it was an F-rank hunter, along with his clones who killed the monster. The man's expression doesn't show it, but he is surprised that an F-rank hunter could defeat a D-rank monster, and all the attacks were concentrated on a single wound. He managed to inflict damage without any kind of special weapons. While Zhang talks with his agent, the man keeps wondering if it's possible to hit a moving monster with such precision. The mysterious man stares at the protagonist and his agent with an unfriendly expression, and decides to first check if there are any other D-rank monsters left in the portal. The fish monster's corpse is still there. Sinisterly, it still keeps its huge eyes wide open. Approaching the portal, the mysterious man wonders what he should explain to the association. Meanwhile, the protagonist is checking the new skills he has acquired. One of them is Dash, which increases movement speed. Another is Projectile, which increases attack power when using a gun. He unlocked Regeneration, as well as the skill Strike, which applies all his strength into a single impact upon activation. On top of that, his strength, dexterity, and stamina stats have also increased. As he cleans his wounds, he realizes that this time he is loaded with new skill and wonders if his clones number 1 and 2 managed to survive thanks to the regeneration skill. The clones were injured, but San believes that letting them heal on their own will help increase their regeneration stat. Junmo praises the protagonist for defeating a D-rank monster, and he gets a little embarrassed. The agent says he thinks he could even hunt an E-rank monster by himself without any problem. And speaking of which, the guy remembers the monster's short sword and approaches to the monster's body and says it had a sword that absorbed the red liquid from its body. Zhang goes to get the sword and says the beast went crazy with red eyes and became much stronger after the sword absorbed the liquid. But before the boy can grab the sword, Junmo stops him, saying it's better for a clone to do it, since it might be a cursed item. Worried, Zhang asks if he can't use cursed items, and the agent explains that these items can be worth a lot depending on their effects, which makes the boy extremely excited. So, he agrees to have a clone pick it up later, and in the meantime, the collection team will take the beast's body. Also, he remembers to ask his agent if an item he took from the beast's head is also expensive. He pulls a strange item from his pocket and shows it to his agent. Yunmo's jaw drops. He's that stunned. It's a large red stone the size of Zhang's hand, but unfortunately, it's a low-level gem. In other words, a worthless item. The boy is so excited that Yunmo has a hard time bursting his bubble. He explains that it's a cheap stat-boosting item, but it can't be used on a person because it has too many side effects. Poor Zhang's hopes are dashed after this explanation, saying goodbye to the money, but the agent explains that the other items could indeed be worth a lot, so he shouldn't feel bad about it. So, the protagonist asks him to take care of collecting the items and thanks him. Back at the protagonist's sweet home, he opens the door to his house. The clones are leaning on each other to walk. They get home and can barely believe everything that happened. He decides to summon number 3 again and tells the other 2 to rest. Zhang concentrates to activate his ability and summon another clone. And just like that, another Zhang appears right in front of him, brand new. He hands his equipment to the clone and tells him to go train. He also changes his clothes, since they were disgustingly dirty, and then sits on the floor, ready to check out what he has: a sword and a stat-boosting stone. These are the items he got. He picks up the stone and starts searching on his phone. It's a strength gem, just as explained. Its agent cannot be used by a person, and if it is used by a summoned entity, it turns into a monster, although it increases the strength stat by 0.005. This side effect bothers our boy. He knows that normally, the clone's injuries and other stats don't affect him, but he knows there is a possibility that the one who turns into a monster won't be one of them, and in his imagination, he pictures the scene. He has a crocodile head and is calling his agent. The agent gets so scared that he shoots him right in the head. Total chaos. So he puts the stone back on the ground and decides not to use it for now. He turns his attention to the new sword he got, but remembers what his agent instructed him: to have a clone. Touch it first in case it's cursed. Since it's in a box, it wasn't a problem to bring it, but he'd like to use it once before selling it. So he orders number 2, who is in the best shape among the clones, to pick up the sword. Obeying his master, the clone approaches the box, where the sword is, extends his arm, then picks it up and holds it high. Sang watches, impressed. Number 2 is still holding the sword and hasn't exploded or turned into a frog, but he says he can hear a voice. Sang asks if it's coming from the sword, so to hear exactly what his clone is hearing, he activates the familiar skill. It's a horrible voice, like a machine gun firing out orders, demanding death and red liquid. The voice was so loud and jarring that the familiar skill deactivated. The boy's ears hurt. Although it's really loud, the voice doesn't affect the clone. Sang wonders if it would affect him if he held the sword. Then he decides they will use it, for now, and the clone agrees. Suddenly, a status window appears, saying that regeneration has increased. The protagonist looks at his clones, who are resting, and he realizes this is helping the regeneration skill, but he's worried because he would have to take them out of the house, and they are completely exhausted, so he orders them to meditate today to unlock mana breathing. The boy closes his eyes and begins to concentrate to start meditating, and decides that he will go to the campus tomorrow. The next day, we see the campus of the university Sang attends. Several students are walking around peacefully, simply living their lives, back to the study routine. The guy thinks the vacation went by too fast. He looks at his status screen, and wonders if it went by so quickly because he was busy leveling up. Meanwhile, he boosted his stats immensely, with the help of his clones who never rest. He continues on his way through the university hallways, lost in thought. He now realizes he's a lonely nerd, since no one has come up to talk to him. But when he gets to the classroom, something catches his eye. His friend Kim Jong-do is sitting at a desk, waiting patiently. They both say at the same time that they're surprised to be in the same class. Kim explains that he signed up for this course because he heard the professor is an easy A. He gets closer and asks if he's still working out. As a girl watches them, she and another girl whisper in surprise, asking if that's really Sam, since he used to be quite chubby. All the girls in the room start to gossip about the protagonist, even considering asking him out. Kim laughs, saying he's popular now. The guy understands that's why no one had greeted him yet. Pointing to his own face, he asks his friend if he's changed that much, and the big guy says he thinks that if Sam ran into his own parents, they wouldn't recognize him. He is stunned, and says he was actually planning to go home. Kim adds that he almost didn't recognize him on the street. The big guy suggests they go for a drink after class and call some people, but Sam says he already has plans. This makes the big guy squeal like a little girl. He is so surprised. Our protagonist explains that he's already made a promise, so he can't hang out with him, shouting loud enough to make the evening news. Kim asks if he has plans with a girl, and everyone in the room is watching their conversation. His friends, Chan Woo and Jun Seong, are also in the same class as him. Kim keeps shouting that he'll always remember this day, even with the professor already in the room. At the World Hunter Association, also known as the WHA, a prophecy of disaster was delivered by the Oracle. President Michael Harris requested more details. He was informed that a portal was expected to open, through which hundreds of monsters would invade. When Harris asked about the specific location and date, he was told that the invasion would involve A-rank monsters, and it was predicted to take place in South Korea. Elsewhere, a man in a suit identified as Park Won-tae, the owner of the third-ranked guild, arrived for a meeting. He was immediately hit on the head by a woman named Mio, who was a guild master. Mio told Park Won-tae that he had grown his mustache to flirt with her, and that she found it attractive. Afterward, the two entered the meeting room. Inside the room was a member of the Jaesin Guild, the same man who had mocked Sam earlier. He provoked another guild member about a recent expedition to Odin's Tower. The Gisan guild member asked if the man's team hadn't returned, or if their results were simply inadequate. A white-haired man tried to calm the situation, stating that this wasn't the place for such comments. The provoked man became very angry, but their confrontation was interrupted when an old man entered the room. The old man was the leader of the Korean Hunter Association. Upon his entrance, everyone took their seats. He thanked them for their attendance and warned them of the impending disaster. When asked about the timing, he explained that they had no specific details, only that it would involve A-rank monsters and a curse somewhere in Korea. A guild member slammed his fist on the table, demanding to know how they could protect an entire country. The association leader calmly replied that the purpose of the meeting was to determine a plan. The attendees voiced their concerns, pointing out that there were barely enough hunters for routine work, let alone guarding the entire country. A man raised his hand and proposed a plan. He suggested that each guild form a party to guard a specific region. If an incident occurred, all parties would converge on that location without exception. He added that any guild that failed to cooperate would face severe punishment. The association leader asked if anyone disagreed with the proposal, and the plan was met with unanimous agreement. After leaving his university, Sang saw a female student being harassed by a man. The man was insisting she give him her phone number and complimenting her appearance. The student responded by telling the man he was ugly. When she noticed Sang approaching, she pretended he was her boyfriend to get away from the man. She clung to Sang's arm and they left the area together. The student explained to Sang that the man had been bothering her, which is why she had pretended they were a couple. She also clarified that she didn't have a boyfriend. Sang noticed her outfit and asked her why she wasn't wearing her school uniform. She replied that it was her birthday. Then, she asked him why he was staring at her. Sang remembered that he already had her phone number, because he was her teacher. At that moment, Sang received a notification that he had earned another 51,001. Then, he invited the student to eat whatever she wanted. Sang took her to a restaurant that served premium steak. Seeing the prices on the menu, she expressed concern about the expense. Sang told her not to worry, stating that his boss was paying for the meal and ordered another round of dishes for them. While they were at the restaurant, an emergency warning appeared on a television screen. The broadcast announced that a monster portal breach was in progress in South Korea, specifying that their region was affected. Elsewhere, his university friends were disappointed that he had missed their party, speculating that he was with a girl. Shortly after, they saw Sang, who seemed to be in a very good mood. At that moment, everyone received a disaster alert on their phones. Sang ran into his friends, who questioned his presence and accused him of skipping their get-together to be with his girlfriend. The young woman with Sang became visibly nervous at the accusation. Sang clarified that she wasn't his girlfriend, but his student, explaining that he had treated her to a meal as a thank you for her earlier help. Then, he introduced them all. One of his friends, Daladol, gave the student a gift of meat, telling her to share it with her parents. She thanked him for the gesture. Sang's other friends watched the interaction, impressed by his comfortable demeanor. The student seemed surprised that their time together had ended. Sang explained that with the disaster alert in effect, her parents would probably be worried about her. His friends suggested they spend more time together, but Sang insisted that everyone should return home immediately for their safety. His friends agreed and left. As he was leaving, Sang observed other people leaving a bar, drinking and laughing, which made him wondering if he was overreacting to the alert. Sang then received a phone call from a man named Genmo, who asked if he had heard the alert. Sang confirmed that he had and asked for more information. Genmo revealed that the alert was expected to last for 3 months, because the location of the monster appearances was unknown. He added that the creatures were predicted to be extremely dangerous, potentially including A-rank monsters, and that an appearance in the capital would result in a high number of casualties. Sang asked why the public wasn't being warned more explicitly if the threat was so severe. Genmo explained that the government couldn't paralyze the national economy for 3 months, as that would lead to the country's collapse. Upon hearing this, Sang understood the underlying reason. He concluded that the vague announcement was a tactic by the Hunter Association to avoid responsibility, allowing them to claim they had issued a warning if a tragedy occurred. Genmo advised Sang to go to a shelter, as the hunting grounds were temporarily closed. After the call, Sang checked on the status of his clones. Clone 1 reported that it was fine, while Clone 2 replied that it was heavily damaged, but not destroyed. Noticing that the cooldown on his abilities had ended, Sang decided to resummon number 1. He dismissed the existing clone and summoned a new one to replace it. Sang traveled to his parents' house. When he opened the door and announced his arrival, his mother didn't recognize him due to his changed appearance, and he had to say his name, Sang-woo, before she recognized him. His father also had to look closely before confirming it was his son. Shortly after, his sister, Kyung-do, appeared, who commented that he should have greeted her first. Initially, Sang didn't recognize her either. His mother invited him in, but then asked about the masked individuals accompanying him. Sang explained that they weren't his friends, but his clones. Sang and his identical clones enter his family's home. He confirms to them that his ability is cloning, and explains that he awakened his powers a month ago. His mother expresses surprise, saying she never expected her son to become a hunter. While his sister reacts with great excitement, his father simply acknowledges that there is now a hunter in the family. Sang states that he no longer wanted to keep his abilities a secret, but his mother immediately interrupts him, warning him that his new role is dangerous. To reassure her, Sang explains that his clones are the ones who do all the fighting. He clarifies that he is never in personal danger and tells her not to worry. After this conversation, Sang urges his family to prepare for an evacuation. He informs them that a disaster is currently happening and that everyone should head to the nearest shelter. His father, however, seems skeptical about the urgency of the situation. He questions the sudden nature of the disaster, commenting that he still has work to attend. The next day, Sang realizes that his family doesn't understand the severity of the threat. Their calm demeanor indicates they believe it's a minor incident involving just a few monsters. Since his family still needs to pack their belongings, Sang decides to stay home with them for the day. He lies to them, claiming he received a message that his classes had been canceled. Later, the family starts preparing dinner using meat that Sang had brought home. A family member asks if his friends, referring to the clones, will also eat. Sang replies that the clones will only be given rice, explaining that the good meat shouldn't be wasted on them. They are then served cubes of rice to the clones, while the family prepares to eat the steak. During the meal, Sang's sister asks if he will get fat again, given that there are 4 versions of him eating. He replies no, explaining that he now burns a great amount of energy. The family enjoys the meal together, commenting that it has been a long time since they all gathered like this. Suddenly, a loud explosion occurs outside. The force of the blast throws Sang to the ground as he opens his eyes. He discovers that the building has been destroyed. Outside, he can see that numerous, large monsters have appeared in the area. A massive creature, resembling a dragon, appeared abruptly, escalating the situation. The monster began to gather energy, emitting an intense heat, before unleashing a powerful beam that incinerated its surroundings. Sang looked back and saw that his entire family had fallen unconscious. He noticed the scattered equipment belonging to his number 1 clone and concluded that he must have sacrificed himself to protect everyone amidst the rubble. He saw clones number 2 and number 3, the latter missing an arm. Sang was now accompanied by one severely damaged clone and another with a missing arm, and he informed his father that a portal had opened, which was the source of the chaos. The city streets were filled with destruction. A large green monster was holding a person, preparing to devour them, while other civilians were being crushed under cars. Winged creatures flew through the sky, carrying people away with them. Sang packed a bag of supplies and put some armor on his sister. She asked if the armless clone was okay, and Sang assured her that it was. Just then, another nearby explosion occurred as a monster crashed to the ground. It became clear that the portal was in the sky, causing monsters to fall directly into the city. Sang was lucky to be on a floor of the building that hadn't collapsed, and he killed the fallen monster, which replenished his mana. When he tried to open a nearby door, he found it stuck, and Sang told his father he would force it open. He picked up a large piece of debris and, using his strike ability along with a kick, managed to break through the obstruction. Below, the scene was one of carnage, bodies, destroyed vehicles, and dead monsters everywhere. Sang asked his father the distance to the nearest shelter. His father replied that it was about 2 kilometers away, but pointed out numerous monsters, such as slimes, skeletons, and stone golems, blocking the path. His sister mentioned knowing an underground tunnel as a safer route. As they started to move, they heard a man calling for help in the distance. They saw him trapped under rubble with a D-rank troll standing right over him. Sang's father urged him to be rational, saying they couldn't help anyone and needed to focus on their own survival. Sang felt conflicted, wanting to save the man, but he knew that his clone, the injured number 3, was not fit for combat. This left only number 2 to protect his family, and he understood he couldn't risk his life, while a man was still trapped, calling out for his mother. Nearby, Sang's heart pounded as his mother urged him to leave. Sang tells them to go downstairs and close the door, assuring them that number 3 will protect them. He states that number 2 will accompany him. His sister yells at him, calling him crazy and accusing him of risking the family's safety. Sang replies that he is a hunter and will not back down from a threat. Sang grabs a stick and charges at the monster, a troll, striking it in the eye. Then, he tells number 2 to take the injured man to a safe place, explaining that their job as hunters is to kill monsters. Sang challenges the troll. Another monster, watching from a distance, repeats his words, showing intelligence. As the fight continues, number 2 works to free the trapped man. Removing stones, he asks the man if he can walk. He replies that he can, surprised to have survived the ordeal. Facing the enormous troll, Sang orders number 2 to grab a weapon. Then, he throws the devil's rock to his companion and tells him to eat it. After consuming it, number 2 instantly transforms into a demonic creature, red, wielding a sword. Sang asks the transformed being if he is still an ally, and the clone confirms that he is. The large troll seems confused by the sudden transformation. Simultaneously, Sang experiences a significant increase in his strength, with no apparent side effects. He prepares to face the troll alone. The troll drags its mass across the ground, before throwing a rock that Sang dodges. The creature attacks with its giant hand and brandishes a sword, severely injuring the clone. When the troll attacks again, Sang charges straight in, noticing it's slower than a previous enemy. He manages to hit the troll in the face, but the monster regenerates its hand and blocks the blow. The troll hits Sang, throwing him aside. Sang identifies the monster's regeneration as the main threat and orders his second clone to disable its legs. The clone cuts the troll's leg muscle, forcing it to its knees. Sang takes the opportunity to precisely stab both of the monster's eyes. The clone attacks the other leg to keep the troll immobilized. The creature falls to the ground, writhing and screaming in what seems to be fear, while Sang tries to listen to the creature, unintentionally activates his strike skill, which smashes into the monster's skull. After the attack, Sang and his clones are left exhausted. A system window indicates a significant gain in stats, but it also reveals that Sang's hand is nearly destroyed by the skill's recoil. Sang gets up and says it's time to find his sister. Then, he notices his phone is missing and asks his second clone to give it back. Suddenly, another explosion signals the arrival of more monsters. The scene plunges into chaos. Spaceships fly, armies arrive, and a giant Godzilla-like creature continues to destroy the city. Projectiles, rank 9 magic from the Red Flame Guild, hit the creature's head. Motivated hunters, including a confident Magnor, arrive at the battle. A voice from a ship announces their arrival. A hatch opens and Park Wanta, leader of one of the top 3 guilds, emerges. On the ground, a tank aims its heavy weapons. A man runs to the newly arrived group, shouting that the giant creature is getting away and that many hunters are already focused on it. He suggests they find another target. The battlefield is covered with bodies, figures, and golden armor. Amid the chaos, some celebrate while others mourn. A man is seen smiling broadly, even though he just lost his partner. The narration points out that he was a scoundrel. A group of survivors is found surrounded by a gang. Sam and his squad are their protectors. Watching from a distance, Park Gwon-ta is impressed that Sam is holding his ground. However, he concludes that with only 2 support clones, Sang won't make it alone. He instructs his team to go north and prepare to rescue them. A member activates a device on the side and they move to intervene, aware that Sang is in a tough situation. After defeating a large creature, Sang is left exhausted. He sees a mother and her daughter nearby and tells the civilians to go to the underground shelter while he stays behind. The crowd protests, warning him that he will die if he stays. Sang instructs his second clone to cover the rear while he escorts the people. As they move, goblins attack and Sang intervenes to save a man. The fight is difficult, as he has little energy from a previous attack and cannot use his abilities effectively. A group of large, black bird-like monsters appears. Then, Sang dodges a projectile of fire or smoke launched by a creature. The attack heads towards the civilians, but Sang orders his clone to use its body as a shield to protect them before the monster attacks again. A different entity, a giant tiger, descends and crushes it. Drained of energy, Sang collapses. Upon regaining consciousness, he sees a man standing before him. The man wields his sword with ease, and the head of a nearby monster falls to the ground. It's Barda, a guild leader. The man asks if everyone is okay and Sang asks for his identity. Meanwhile, in the shelter, underground, Sang's sister declares she will go look for him. His third clone stops her, saying he has no orders to let her out. She tries to force her way past, but the clone is too strong. Her parents urge her to stop, but she expresses her concern that something is wrong because Sang hasn't returned. Her father states that he realized Sang was a hunter and that they must now trust him. An unidentified person bangs on the shelter door, screaming for help. The occupants are reluctant to open it because access is protected by a password known only to the building's residents. Sang's sister, believing it was someone he rescued with a message, opens the door. An injured man, apparently under enemy control, rushes inside. This intruder is a screaming firefly, a B-class monster. The shelter plunges into chaos as everyone flees. Sang's sister comes face to face with the creature. The third clone, still missing an arm, moves to protect her. He tries to stab the monster in the forehead, but the attack fails, and the clone is impaled. The monster's strike pierces through the clone and also impales Sang's sister. The parents are distraught as they watch their daughter collapse. Clone 3 grabs a weapon and activates the sealed emergency fire system, then kicks the monster out and closes the door to protect the others. Elsewhere, Park Wanta approaches Sang. He apologizes for his late arrival and offers a hand to help Sang up. Sang recognizes Park Wanta by his name, but is surprised by the man's immense strength. Sang introduces himself and thanks him for being saved. In return, Park Wanta thanks Sang for saving so many people. The survivors praise Sang and for his actions, and he responds modestly. Park Wanta tells Sang to calm down, recalling that he saw him disappear just as he arrived. He wonders about Sang's identity and the nature of his power, then asks if he is a hunter. Sang confirms that he is, but explains that he's new to the role. Park Wanta then asks Sang to reveal his ability. Sang hesitates, reluctant to share the information, but feels indebted to the man who saved him. Just as he's about to speak, he suddenly loses his mental connection with his clone, number 3, and upon realizing this, Sang grabs a sword from the ground and yells that his family is in danger, and immediately runs in their direction. Park Won-ta understands the situation is urgent and instructs the rescue team to stay and escort the survivors to safety, while Sang runs at full speed. The demonic sword he carries whispers commands to him, urging him to kill. He struggles to maintain his composure as he activates his rush skill. Elsewhere, a man with a mustache charges a fire bullet and shoots it at a massive monster, but the attack has no effect. Other hunters try to focus their magic attacks on one spot on the creature's body, but their combined efforts are ineffective. A hunter with a poisoned sword finds he can't penetrate the monster's skin. The group starts to realize they must cooperate to defeat the beast. Just then, a new individual arrives and dismisses the idea of teamwork. The other hunters ask what he's doing, and he replies that he's only here for the monetary reward. He declares that someone with his power doesn't need to cooperate. As he speaks, he launches a powerful attack that looks like a meteor shower. Meanwhile, at the shelter, Sang's father tries to stop his daughter's bleeding, calling for an ambulance or medical help. Sang's mother is also distraught, as the girl's condition seems critical. Suddenly, there's a spark at the shelter door, and Sang's father sees that something has burned through the seal. A small monster has entered the room. His daughter, injured on the floor, urges him to run. The cursed firefly monster begins to speak through the girl, using her voice to beg not to die. The parents remained with their daughter, as another individual arrived. Sang and his father made eye contact. To his father, Sang looked different, as if possessed. Seeing his sister injured on the floor made Sang fly into a rage again, after a brief moment of calm. Sang rushed forward and attacked the monster. Severing one of its arms, however, he was also hit in the exchange. Sang writhed in pain, while the monster seemed to take pleasure in his suffering. Just like in a previous encounter, the sword was making its wielder become more unstable with more blood before the fight resumed. The monster with numerous legs closed the distance and confronted Sang directly. Suddenly, a colleague intervened, saving Sang from the threat. Another man, Won-tai, also arrived while the monster was still there. Sang collapsed into Won-tai's arms. He executed a flying kick that sent the creature far away. The female colleague who assisted Sang reported that his injuries were severe. It became clear that Sang was missing an arm and was entering a berserker state. The woman performed a mana transfer, but Sang's condition continued to deteriorate uncontrollably. Won-tai asked about Sang and the woman replied that he was not doing well. She urged Won-tai to kill the monster immediately. Sang, in critical condition, spoke weakly. He mentioned his sister, indicated her location, and told his colleagues to save her instead of him. Won-tai assured Sang that he and his sister would survive. He told Sam to rest, promising that the situation would be resolved soon. Shortly after, Sam lost consciousness. At the Hunter Association, the situation was chaotic, and many were demanding an evacuation. The leader of the top-ranked guild arrived at a meeting before an official disaster announcement. This guild leader opposed making the situation public, stating that it would cause a city lockdown. He warned that, since the exact time of the disaster was unknown, a premature announcement would have severe economic consequences for the country, for which the association would be blamed. The association leader asked what the guild leader proposed. The man suggested withholding information about the creatures from the public, reasoning that this would shift the responsibility to those who chose not to evacuate. The association leader disagreed, pointing out that this would cause many deaths. The guild leader replied that he considered the casualties a positive outcome, adding that anyone who hadn't awakened or was below D rank was useless. He then placed a hand on the shoulder of the association leader, implying that his suggestion was not a request. The scene changes to Zhang and his clones. While the clones trained intensely, Zhang was resting and eating snacks. Junmo contacted Zhang, advising him not to rely solely on his clones for training. Junmo warned that Sung was wasting his potential to be one of the best hunters. Sang dismissed the concern, replying that everything was fine. Sang doesn't want to be a hunter, his main motivation is to make money. Hearing this, Yunmo's expression changes, and he asks Sang if this desire for money is the reason for his situation, and if it's a sufficient goal for him. Sang has a dream where he sees visions of his deceased family, including his sister who begs him to save her. He wakes up from the nightmare exhausted. Won-tae is by his side and asks if he had a nightmare, advising him not to move much. Sang acknowledges the pain. Won-tae relays the doctor's assessment, explaining that Sang's condition is serious. The wound was very deep, but he was lucky to survive. Sang thanks him, but Wante dismisses it and mentions that he has something to discuss with him later. Just then, Sang's parents enter in distress, urgently asking if they have lost their daughter. A doctor reports that Sang's surgery was successful, but he will require continuous monitoring while he recovers. Sang is informed that it has been 4 days since the portal appeared. All the main monsters have been eliminated, leaving only a few low-class ones. Sang says he doesn't remember anything that happened before he lost consciousness. He then asks about his sister's location and condition, but no one answers him as they all lower their heads in silence. Sang insists, asking why no one is talking and if his sister is also in a hospital. The doctor finally explains that although his abdominal wound was treated, it was infected by a mana virus from the monster. This virus drains energy. In most cases it's harmless, because the virus dies upon encountering an incompatible mana trait. However, in rare cases, a person's mana perfectly matches the virus, preventing them from living a normal life. Sang asks how the infection is cured. The doctor explains that there is currently no cure. The only options are to seek treatment from a powerful healer, an S-class named Bless, or to acquire specific healing items from the other side of the portal. The doctor emphasizes that either option would be extremely expensive. Hearing this, Sang blames himself for the outcome. He regrets his decision to help others instead of prioritizing his family. He reflects that the situation would have been different if he had been stronger like Wontai, or if he had the power to save everyone. He feels he should have tried harder. Sometime later, a young woman visits Sang in his hospital room. He asks her if her family is safe, and she confirms they evacuated to a shelter in time. She explains that she found out about his hospitalization after getting his family's contact information from a mutual friend. The visitor wishes Sang a speedy recovery, adding that she still has a lot to learn from him. Sam interrupts her, saying he has to tell her something important, then informs her that he is dropping out of college. 2 weeks later, Sam has already been discharged from the hospital with a remarkably fast recovery. Before leaving, he explained his sister's medical condition to his visitor and informed her that he could no longer tutor her, apologizing for the inconvenience, and she simply replied that it was okay. Before he left, she informed Sam that even if he didn't contact her, he would regret it. She explained her plan to enroll in the university he had told her about and to find a new boyfriend there. She warned him not to try to get back together with her once she had moved on. After their conversation ended, Sang ignored her words and focused on his immediate goal, traveling to a dungeon in a taxi. Sang researched about the captain of a prominent guild he hoped to join. Shortly after, he arrived at the headquarters of the Canis Guild. Upon entering, a receptionist approached and asked how she could help him. Sang stated that he was there to see the captain. The receptionist asked if he had an appointment. Sang replied that the captain himself had invited him, despite his explanation. The receptionist maintained that an appointment was necessary before she could finish. A large, bearded man interrupted them, asked Sam to confirm his identity, and Sam affirmed he was the person he was looking for. The bearded man instructed the receptionist to let Sam pass, informing her that he was an expected guest. He told Sank that the captain was waiting for him. Sank was led to a room where the captain was standing, looking at a painting on the wall. After a knock on the door, someone announced Sank's arrival, and the captain granted him entry. The captain expressed his relief at seeing Sank return safely and asked how he had recovered so quickly. Zhang replied that it was thanks to the captain's intervention that he avoided more serious injuries. The captain dismissed the praise, stating that he had only done what was expected of anyone in that situation. Sang, however, disagreed, stressing that the captain's actions had far exceeded a simple duty. He pointed out that the captain had not only saved him, but also his entire family, making sure that everyone received immediate and proper medical attention. Sang stated that a simple expression of gratitude was not enough. Then he asked the captain what his real motivation was for offering so much help. Sang mentioned the private hospital room, the financial support for his parents, and the specialized intensive care unit that had been assigned to his sister, Yibu. In response to the question, the captain clenched his fist tightly, revealing that he also has a sister who disappeared along with his team members. He explained that he saw a clear parallel between his own situation and the near loss of Sang's sister. Sang acknowledged his gratitude, but admitted to feeling, then asked why the captain had summoned him so soon after his recovery. The captain stated that he needed to know about the ability that Zhang had previously hidden. He asked directly if Sang's clones were solid, physical bodies, referencing the clone that had sacrificed itself to protect a civilian. Sang confirmed that this was his ability and that he had no intention of hiding it at all. The captain then made his request directly, stating that he needed Sang's help, asking him to assist in the rescue of the Canis Guild's first team. He clarified that this was not a demand for payment, but a firm belief that Sang was the only person capable of saving his sister and his comrades. The captain bowed to Sang. The gesture reminded Sang of his own desperation when he had begged someone to save his sister. Realizing that it was now his turn to help another, Sang agreed to do everything he could. Sang asked for instructions on how to start the rescue mission and was then taken to a training facility. The captain explained that while rescues are usually urgent, this situation was different. His sister possesses an ability that can generate survival supplies for up to 8 months. He also warned that the dungeon they were going to enter is a very, very high level one. So high that even a team of B-rank hunters hadn't been able to escape. Sang understood the gravity of the mission. The captain informed Sang that he wasn't strong enough for the task yet, explaining that Sang's current stats were insufficient, and that he could no longer rely solely on his combat sense, as it had reached its maximum potential. Hearing this, Sang reacted with total disbelief and profound astonishment. Gemmed grew worried after Sang asked to take a break from the house for a few days, and then ceased all contact. Sang later appeared before him looking severely beaten up. Gemmed asked him what exactly had happened. Sang explained that he had been beaten up and proceeded to recount the recent events. Gemmed commented on the fact that Sang's sister had been infected, but Sang himself seemed to be fine. Sang confirmed that he was fine, and mentioned that he had accepted a mission from Kina's guild after Gemmed expressed his understanding. Sang asked him to update his contact information to clone number 2, since he had lost his old phone. Gemmed suggested that Sang should back up his contacts from the old device, but Sang flatly refused when Gemmed asked how he would reconnect with his friends and acquaintances. Sang replied that it was for the best. Gemmed then asked about the cause of his injuries. Sang explained that he was training with a man named Huanta. Alarmed by Sang's condition, Gemmed offered to complain to the guild about the harshness of the training. Sang stopped him, explaining that he understood Huanta was desperate and motivated by the desire to save his own sister. Sang also told Gemmed his plan to incorporate his clones into the training sessions. The next day, Sang brought one clone to train with Huanta. Both Sang and the clone were defeated. The next day, he brought 2 clones, and all 3 of them were mercilessly beaten. The following day, he returned with 3 clones, but all 4 of them were defeated again. Gemmed spoke with Sang and his injured clones. Sang admitted that Huanta was overwhelmingly strong. He explained that even mimicking his opponent's movements was useless because of the difference in their power levels. It was too big and conspicuous, so after some thought, Sang devised a new strategy and asked Genma for permission to test it. Genma consented without knowing the details of the plan. The next day at training, Huanta asked Sang and his clones if they were tired of being defeated, then noticed that Sang had given his clones a substance that had been supplied by Yemet. Sang and the enhanced clones were now ready to face him. Huanta, also known as Tai, asked what Sang had done to the clones. Sang urged him to stop talking and just start the fight. After an initial exchange of blows, Huanta commented that the fight wasn't as easy as he had anticipated. He pointed out that while the clones normally possessed half of Sang's stats, the substance had brought them to a level of power almost equal to his own. However, after landing a blow, Huanta pointed out that while the clones were now stronger, they had lost their advantage of precision. Sang lashed out at his opponents, reflecting that he had not become a monster. Then he pulled out a gun and fired at an adversary, but the man withstood the bullet. The opponent counterattacked with a strike of his own and declared that a mana bullet couldn't harm him. In response, Sang executed a complex and elaborate maneuver. Despite his efforts, the opponent defeated him. The victor explained that simply hitting hard was insufficient and that one must concentrate mana to unify with their sword. Although he was only a C-rank hunter, Sang had no intention of stopping his efforts to improve. His motivation to become stronger wasn't based on the other man's advice, but on a feeling of helplessness that he had experienced after waking up in a hospital. At that moment, he had been forced to entrust his family's safety to someone else, and the memory of this event had changed him profoundly. Now he resented his past weakness and was determined to never stop moving forward. 6 months later, in the Zeldin Station hunting grounds, an individual was struck and knocked to the ground. A group of men was trying to enter the area when a guardian arrived. One of the men questioned the guardian's intervention, claiming that he had paid his entrance fee, but the guard called him an idiot. The guard then informed the group that the hunting grounds belonged to the Silver Moon Guild. Sang, who was also present, punched one of the men and knocked him to the ground. He questioned their decision to interfere with the guild's business. The remaining members of the group got angry and surrounded Sang. They identified themselves as rank hunters and asked him if he thought he could take them all on by himself. Sang questioned their assumption that he was alone and proceeded to summon his squad. The summoned allies quickly defeated the group of hunters. Meanwhile, Wanta visited Junmo late at night. Junmo asked the reason for the visit and Wanta presented him with a document related to their business. The document detailed Sang's initial stats and showed his significant evolution over the past 6 months. Wanta commented that Sang's growth made him seem like a different species. Junmo asked if Sang was now strong enough to execute their plan. Wanta admitted that he had prepared a backup plan in case Sang's development was inadequate, but noted that his growth had been monstrous. He pointed out that Sang's strength stat had increased from 1.4 to 19, and his regeneration had gone up from 0. Wanta concluded it was time to begin the rescue mission, also considering that Sang's clones were even stronger than his stats suggested. At the dungeon entrance, Sang was involved in a physical altercation with several individuals. A guard intervened and told Sang to stop, but Sang questioned the order, claiming the others had started the conflict. He then instructed his clones to destroy one of their phones and prevent them from calling for reinforcements. Other hunters who witnessed the scene decided to avoid trouble and look for a different dungeon. Inside the hunting ground of Sealdong Station, Sang encountered an individual holding a gem. When questioned, the person identified himself as a collector. Sang greeted the man, who recognized Sang, and asked why he was there. Sang confronted him, stating that he was too weak to be in a D-rank dungeon and that his gear was not suitable for hunting. He then noticed another person also collect close and deduced they had been trapped by the Silver Moon Guild. Sang expressed no sympathy, but demanded a full explanation of their situation to assure them that the members of the guild outside were no longer a threat. He showed the man a photograph of the defeated individuals at the gate. The man was surprised to see that Sang had defeated D-rank hunters. Sang silenced him and again insisted on an explanation. The man explained that in some dungeons, the monsters fight each other, and the Silver Moon Guild traps weaker people inside to collect the items that are left behind. To be released, these individuals must meet a very high gem quota, which traps them effectively and can lead to significant debt. He added that if someone died while collecting gems, their death was simply dismissed. Zhang then told the man he was free to go. As the man thanked him and turned to leave, Zhang stopped him and instructed him to leave the gem he was holding. Zhang took the gem and threw it to his clone, number 1, ordering him to consume it. With the area cleared, Zhang decided to start collecting gems himself. His work was interrupted by a person frantically fleeing from a C-rank monster. Just as the creature was about to attack, Sam pushed the person to safety. The individual he saved asked who he was, and Sam replied that he was their savior. As the monster drew closer, the person panicked, accusing Sam of leading the creature to them. Zhang told them to stay calm. When the person noticed the powerful physique of Zhang's clone, they tried to flee again. Zhang grabbed them, preventing their escape and demanding they explain everything. While some onlookers reacted with terror to the appearance of a large creature, Zhang's clones were already fighting it, causing several explosions. Zhang himself remained calm, even when one of his clones was defeated. He questioned the clone, asking how it could have lost after consuming so many gems. He then instructed the clone to stay still, reminding it of the resources he had invested and stating that it needed to focus. Without a moment's hesitation, Sang unsheathed a cursed sword and severed one of the creature's arms. He proceeded to attack the female creature with a relentless series of slashes, which seemed to confuse his opponent completely. The sword's curse began to affect Sang, triggering a memory of the monster that had killed his sister. He momentarily struggled to maintain his composure as the creature swung its remaining hand towards Sang, who responded by summoning 50 clones to intercept the attack. He then used the cursed sword to land a powerful blow, severing the attacking limb. Afterward, Sang muttered that he didn't like using that particular weapon. The young woman who had witnessed the fight asked if he had really defeated the creature all by himself. Sang confirmed that he had, just as he had promised he would, before turning his attention to his main clone. Sang approached his first clone and asked about its condition. The clone was seriously injured, and its wound showed no signs of healing. The woman explained that the creature's bone sword was cursed, which prevented any wound it inflicted from closing. She told Sang that they would need a healer. The woman then asked if the clone was actually human, and Sang confirmed that yes, it was. The woman admitted that she had initially mistaken the clone for a troll wearing a cap. After a moment of hesitation, she handed Sang a potion and instructed him to give it to the clone, saying it would help a lot. Sang examined the vial and noticed a small skull floating inside, which made him question its safety. Deciding he had no other choice, he administered the potion to the clone. Subsequently, Smoke and a poisonous substance were expelled from the clone's body, and Sang observed that the treatment seemed to have been effective. Although the clone appeared to have recovered, the woman explained that the effect was only temporary. She warned that the clone's life force would now be depleted over time. She revealed that her ability was poison conjuration, which allowed her to create various potions and poisons. The substance she had provided, she clarified, was more of a potion than a poison, but it was still dangerous. She expressed her concern that the clone's life force would decrease considerably. Upon hearing this, Sang turned to his clone and ordered it to go hunt immediately, as its time was now very limited. The woman then stated that since she had revealed her ability, Sang should share his. At that moment, she asked him what it was and why he could command monsters, pointing out that she had never encountered a B-rank individual with his level of power. Sang corrected her, informing her that he was actually E-rank. The woman expressed her disbelief and questioned how a rank hunter, that he could operate in such a dangerous zone. Sang interrupted her, telling her to relax and stating that he would be the one asking the questions from that moment on. Meanwhile, in the YOLO Guild's warehouse, several members were moving boxes. They called out to a young woman who seemed to be blushing. Another guild member approached and asked the first woman why she was gathering so many items, commenting on her unusual behavior. The woman explained that a person named Onatag had requested a favor. The second woman wondered aloud why Sang needed such a large quantity of stones and questioned if he intended to consume them all. Later, on a train, the woman from the previous fight reflected on Sang's harsh reaction to her question about his ability. She considered the possibility that he was a dangerous person, but then decided that instead, she should try to trust him. Trying to appear calm, she told Sang that he could talk to her if he wished. Sang turned to look at her, thinking to himself that her suspicions about him had been rather foolish. Sang stood up and asked the woman about the Hisong Guild, which she had mentioned while fleeing. Surprised, she questioned how a hunter could not know about them. Sang explained that he had only been a hunter for a short time and asked her to tell him about the guild's illicit activities. The woman revealed that Silver Moon is a puppet organization of the Hisong Guild, created to handle their unethical operations. She added that the Hisong Guild is controlled by a man with a mustache, recalling someone else who had been harmed by them. Sang asked if she had also been captured by the Hisong Guild. The woman replied that he didn't need to know that information. Having acquired the details he was looking for, Sang announced he was leaving to continue hunting. The woman asked why he was leaving so soon. He told her that if she didn't want to stay, she should head for the door. He then turned and walked away. Sang commented that he found her ability quite impressive. In response, she said she didn't like her power because it had many side effects and was designed primarily for killing. Sang then handed her Junmo's contact card, advising her to call them if she was afraid of the Hisong Guild and needed a safer place to work, noting that people also felt a strong aversion to that guild. With that, she left to hunt monsters. As she left, Sang reflected that he should have tried harder to persuade her, as her poison ability could be very useful for his clones. During a later fight, Sang's #1 clone suddenly collapsed and disappeared. This was a side effect of the poison ability that Sang recognized as a rather significant drawback. Once the ability's cooldown period ended, he summoned the clone again, which appeared without any clothes. He instructed it to get dressed, and after it was ready, he resumed the hunt. Unseen by Sang, 2 large men were watching him from a distance. They appeared to be some of the hunters who had been collecting gems before he forced everyone to leave the area, deciding to search for valuables themselves. They soon discovered a pool of refined liquid crystal. The men discussed how a small amount of the substance was worth 100 times more than common gems, and could increase a person's stats by 0.5. However, they also knew that consuming it would transform the user into a monster. One of them, a man with blonde hair, concluded that the stat increase wasn't worth the risk. His partner then mentioned an illegal organization called DEP, which processed these items for human use. Given that DEP bought all available gems, its suppliers became very rich upon realizing the immense value of their discovery. The 2 men decided to return the next day to collect all the liquid crystal. After the men closed the door and left, it immediately opened again. The woman who had been with Sang appeared in the doorway. She had been followed by one of his clones, but she had managed to evade it. She began to collect all the valuables in the room, stuffing them into her clothes. A chaotic crowd was running nearby, and she blended in with them to escape. The nearby clone didn't notice her departure. Meanwhile, Sang continued to accumulate wealth from his hunt until he was interrupted by an incoming message the next day telling them to go to Kina's guild for a mission briefing. The men who had initially found the liquid crystal returned to the dungeon and discovered that the crystal had disappeared. In response, one of the men violently grabbed a guard by the neck, expressing his frustration with the security, and demanded to know who had been allowed into the area. The guard explained that the only individuals who had accessed the place were Sang's group and the people who were evacuated afterward. Hearing this, the man released the guard, remembering his encounter with Sang and his companions. He inwardly wondered how he could possibly contend with opponents of their caliber. Meanwhile, a female character who had escaped the previous conflict was moving through the night and felt relieved to have met Sang, believing that she wouldn't have survived otherwise. She had also managed to acquire some gems from the incident. As she stopped to examine the gems she had taken, a business card fell out of her pocket. She picked it up and recalled Sang's words. He had told her that her ability was impressive and offered her a spot, giving her the number on the card. Despite this, her thoughts turned critical, and she dismissed Sang as an idiot and decided she wouldn't contact him just because he had praised her skills. At the Tawu Guild meeting, the briefing began. He stated that the mission was related to the Tower of Odin, a place where Team 1, which included his sister, was currently trapped. Junmo seemed confused by this information, while Sang asked for clarification on what the Tower of Odin was. Tahuan explained that it's a type of dungeon that is unique, having one entrance but no known exit. The only link to the outside world is a being known as mana, and communication with those inside is only possible through telepathy. He added that the only ways to get out of the tower are to complete the dungeon or use a teleportation skill. Sang considered the implications for his cloning ability, realizing he could send the clones inside to gather information. He asked Tahuan if this was the plan and if he was capable of carrying it out. Sang then questioned why the formidable Team 1 hadn't been able to escape on their own. Tahuan admitted that the team had been given a means of escape before their departure. Then he stepped forward to provide a detailed explanation of the events that led to the team getting trapped. He recounted that 5 years earlier, just before the end of the 2005 disaster, his sister had awakened a subspace storage ability. During that difficult period for humanity, her ability to store objects and even people proved essential for their survival over the years. They overcame many dangerous situations together, and his sister grew to become a leader, fierce, eventually taking command of Team 1. Hwanta recalled advising her that it was only safe to enter Odin's tower with a teleporter on the team. His sister, however, argued that they had already tried to recruit teleporters without success and that they were well prepared with scrolls. She insisted that they needed to undertake the mission immediately to prevent their guild from falling behind its rivals. To prove her preparedness, she showed Hwanta her vast arsenal of supplies. Although he was reluctant, she convinced him, and the team set off for the tower. A friend later tried to reassure Hwanta, urging him to trust in his team and in his own judgment as the guildmaster. That same day, he made the public announcement that Sang had seen when he was younger, an event Hwanta described as a mere coincidence. Junmo then asked if any attempt had been made to contact the team. He explained that they had brought 10 telepathy scrolls to send information back. Communications proceeded normally for the first few weeks. However, after about a month, something went wrong at the communications tent set up at the entrance of the tower. An operator was preparing a scroll to receive a message from the team, but the transmission he received was completely unexpected. Hwanta continued his story about the tower, recalling the day his team used a scroll to establish contact with Team 1, which was trapped inside. He described how a portal, a teleportation portal, opened right next to them as the first person emerged from the portal. She was gravely injured, with major abdominal injuries and bleeding profusely from the mouth. Hwanta recalled that at that moment, the confidence of everyone present was completely shattered. The injured survivor then collapsed into a colleague's arms, who immediately called for a medical team. While this was happening, the portal began to show signs. A woman from the group asked if the telepathic connection was still active, and a man confirmed that it was. She instructed him to relay a message to the team inside, warning them that a rescue party would arrive at 2 in the afternoon, and that they should prepare to leave. While receiving medical attention, the injured man apologized. He explained that a new, unknown type of monster had appeared inside the tower. Despite their best efforts, even the highest-ranking healers were unable to effectively treat his wounds. Taiwan recounted that he stood there, stunned and unable to speak. The telepath then announced that he would repeat the last words from the team inside the tower. He relayed their message, in which they stated their belief that they had failed the mission. Although they had initially thought they might succeed, they urged the rescue party not to rush, as they could still hold out for a while. Their last communication was a promise to try and return alive, no matter what. Taiwan concluded that after this event, They tried to hire many other hunters, but no one was willing to enter the tower where only the teleporter had managed to survive. Back in the present, Taiwan confirmed to Sam that he believed Sam could reach the location where the team was trapped. With this confirmation, Taiwan stated that he was ready to execute the rescue mission and that the guild would provide an escort to the tower's entrance. Before leaving, however, they planned to make a stop at a bar called Paradise. Elsewhere, Yang, the leader of the Silver Moon Guild, was physically assaulting his subordinates. These were the men who had been tasked with imprisoning weaker individuals underground to collect stones. They tried to explain that a strange hunter who wasn't registered on the D-class list had interfered with their operation. Yang angrily asked how they could have been defeated by an E-class hunter and continued to beat them. He reminded them that the High Song Guild would not wait for them forever, and ordered them to find the man and bring him in. The Silver Moon Guild was now tasked with capturing him. Sang, their leader, Yang, privately thought that his subordinates would probably fail. Nearby was another man who was identified as Kang Shinxian, the vice leader of the Silver Moon Guild. The next day, Sang spoke with Jetmo, expressing his suspicion that Taiwan had not been completely truthful. He specifically questioned his true motives for wanting to clear the Tower of Odin. Sang mentioned that his own knowledge of the tower was limited, but he knew from the jumper George Lucas that it had already been cleared in February of 2012. He recalled the public's reaction at the time, with many people asking Lucas about the tower's contents and rewards. Sang recounted that George Lucas had stated that the Tower of Odin was empty, with only a single monster remaining inside. Lucas had declared that there were no treasures or items to be found, and had advised other hunters not to risk their lives for a futile effort. Upon hearing this, Jetmo offered to investigate the matter for Sang, but Sang refused, saying it wasn't necessary. As their conversation concluded, the agency's door opened and a woman entered. It was revealed that she had been sleeping inside the building. Jetmo asked about her identity, and Sang explained that he had summoned her to the agency. When Jetmo approached the woman, she moved away from him. The first thing she did was ask for food. After she finished eating, Sang handed her a number and asked if she had come to the agency to work. She affirmed that she had. Jetmo asked what her skills were, to which she replied, item appraisal and potion creation. Sang then clarified that her potions were lethal to anyone who drank them. Sang, now with a new haircut, explained to Jetmo that her deadly potions would be very effective when used on his clones. Understanding the plan, Jetmo accepted her into the agency and began to gather the necessary equipment for her to produce basic potions. With the matter settled, Sang stood up and announced his departure, stating that he had more important things to do. The woman asked where he was going, assuming he was hunting in dungeons. Sang corrected her, saying that her purpose was different this time. In response, she threw him some mana and strength potions. Jetmo then asked about the side effects of the potions she had given Sang. The woman explained that the strength potion would dissolve the user's muscles, and the mana potion would make the user explode. Sometime later, Sang gathered his group outside. He told them it was time to leave, and motivated them with the promise of good food when they returned, which made them react with great enthusiasm. A woman had almost finished moving a collection of jewels to the guild's warehouse. When she was about to report her progress, she discovered the place had been looted. Shocked by the scene, she wondered who would have the audacity to rob the YOLO Guild. Then, she activated a detection skill that allowed her to locate the thieves' position. After confirming their position, she entered a portal in pursuit of them. Before she could reach them, she was ambushed and violently beaten by a man named Kanji Kanshin. He apologized to her, explaining that he and his group needed the jewels, and asked his accomplice if they had secured all the items. After receiving confirmation, Kanshin ordered his team to finish their job and set the building on fire. The jewels they stole were the same ones Sang needed for an upcoming mission. The scene then shifts to Iceland, where Sang and his companions arrive in a spaceship. They stand in front of a portal that leads to Valhalla, which is connected to Odin's tower. At the entrance, the guards informed Sang that a man named Hwanta was waiting for him. Sang proceeded through the portal and emerged on a stone path in an area that looked like outer space. He was disoriented by the environment, observing that it didn't look like a tower. Sang noticed the extreme cold and located the guild's supply depot. Inside, he found that all the jewels had been stolen, and the occupants were discussing the incident. When Sang entered, the people present greeted him enthusiastically. They provided the clones accompanying Sang with jackets and to protect them from the cold before the group prepared to leave. Their objective was 40 kilometers from the entrance, in the place where a previous team had disappeared. Sang commented that the distance wasn't as great as he had expected, considering it had taken the first team a month to travel that far. He explained that the delay was due to battles with monsters, not a shortage of supplies. He then gave Zhang 3 protective scrolls for the clones. Zhang distributed the scrolls to clones numbered 4, 5, and 6, stating they were essential for his plan. Zhang asked for instructions on how to use them and was told to simply tear them, as each one was linked to a fixed location. A woman at the depot added that Team 1 had been scheduled to investigate a specific area at 2 in the afternoon and advised Zhang to look for signs of a battle there. She then asked if he had any more questions. In response, Sam asked Wanda what she would like for dinner if he returned successfully with her sister. Wanda replied that she would want a home-cooked meal. The clones gathered their swords and potions and the team of 5 set off on their mission. Zhang stayed behind, sitting in a chair to activate his familiar skill. Back at the depot, a nervous Wanda acknowledged that the success of the mission now depended entirely on Zhang. Zhang's familiar skill was working correctly, allowing his summoned warriors to move through the severe snowstorm. The weather presented a significant obstacle, hindering progress, even with their inherent resistance to the cold. He finally reached Odin's Tower, located near a structure that appeared to be a frozen city. Upon his arrival, Zhang experienced an unusual sensation. He realized that he now possessed complete and direct control over his main familiar's body. This was an effect of his familiar skill reaching level 17, which had evolved the ability from a simple sensory share to complete physical command. The new level of control was fundamentally different. Whereas before, he would issue mental orders that the familiar would obey, he now felt as if he were inhabiting the body himself. Using this enhanced connection, he directed his squad of familiars to advance. As he began his mission, Zhang noticed from the state of his clothes that the path behind him had disappeared, making a retreat impossible. The first monster to confront him was a large ice bat. His familiars dispatched the creature with ease. Instead of engaging in combat himself, Zhang remained at a distance to observe and analyze the enemies. He noticed that these bats attacked in groups and were always led by a more powerful boss variant. When the bat boss appeared, Zhang prepared to draw his sword, but his familiars destroyed it before he even had a chance to act. After the effortless encounter, Zhang and his familiars continued to advance, fighting against numerous bats. They covered a distance of 13 kilometers, a quarter of the total journey, more quickly than he had anticipated. Soon, new monsters emerged, resembling yetis armed with clubs. Zhang was well prepared, immediately firing a magic projectile that seemed to hit one in the head. He organized his familiars into a tactical formation, with 2 fighting on the front line, while 3 provided support from the rear. The battle was straightforward, and the yetis were defeated without any trouble. The lack of any real challenge made Zhang feel uneasy, but he remarked to himself that his progress was perfect. Just as he was considering how well things were going, the ground beneath his familiar crumbled, and he found himself in a different location. A woman in a tent asked a man named Wanda if he was sure that Zhang would be safe. Wanda told her not to worry, explaining that their original plan had been a small-scale infiltration to rescue a few people, with a second, larger group to follow later. However, Zhang's growth rate had far surpassed all expectations. In just 6 months, his stats had increased by almost 20 points each, raising his power to the level of a B-rank hunter, an impressive achievement. Wanta also took note of Zhang's position as CEO in the United States Air Force. The woman observed that this meant Zhang's individual strength was equivalent to that of a full B-rank team, and Wanta completely agreed with her assessment, confirming his worth. He added that Zhang would be even stronger if the assault on the Yoloville warehouse had been successful. The woman then stated that, aside from the ice golem, no other monster on the first floor should pose a real threat to him. Wanta confirmed that he had already warned Zhang about the golem and was confident he could handle it without any issues. Meanwhile, Zhang had landed in a rather dangerous-looking area. He prepared himself for a difficult confrontation, cutting his finger to cover the blade of his sword with his own blood, then swung his enhanced weapon against a golem of gigantic ice. The attack had no impact, not even managing to leave it a scratch. The golem counterattacked with a powerful headbutt that Zhang managed to dodge by nimbly jumping to the side. Now he was facing the harsh reality that his most powerful sword was completely ineffective against this formidable opponent. The area was in a state of total chaos, with numerous hostile creatures still present everywhere. A huge golem consumes one of these creatures and then extends its open palm. Zhang immediately clings to it. Zhang dodges multiple approaching projectiles while observing the golem, which is eliminating the creatures with much more efficiency than his own clones. Sang finds this quite suspicious. He remembers that he had been warned that to defeat the golem he had to hit the yellow core, located right in the center of its chest. Sang considers his options, as his magic bullets can't even manage to scratch the core. The golem raises its arm for a downward hammer blow, and Sang instructs his clones to evade the attack, dodging the falling debris, but he cannot avoid an approaching punch. The blow doesn't reach him directly, but instead hits and destroys one of his clones, number 5. Seeing this, Sang realizes that he must resolve the situation quickly and considers using a teleport scroll. Formulating a plan, Sang charges toward the golem, which is now mercilessly dragging the remains of the destroyed clone. Sang activates a skill in his legs as the golem tries to bite him, narrowly avoiding being devoured. He lunges forward just as the creature's mouth snaps shut. The remaining clones watch with uncertainty, but Sang is revealed to be safe and completely outside of the golem. Lying on the ground, he looks at the enraged creature and asks if it liked what it just swallowed. It becomes clear that Sang's maneuver made the golem ingest the teleport scroll. A brief flashback clarifies Sang's ingenious strategy. As clone number 5 was being hit, Sang decided that if he couldn't break the core, he would teleport it away instead. The scroll activated inside the golem, creating a portal that only affected its living component. The core disappeared, and the golem was completely neutralized. With the golem defeated, Sang receives a significant increase in his strength, vitality, dexterity, and mana. His cloning ability also levels up. He reflects that this particular ability had been stagnant for a long time compared to the. Then, he decides not to summon a new clone for the time being. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a man named George Lucas, who is taking a relaxing bath. A digital assistant presents him with a list of the people who requested to see him that month. He becomes visibly distressed as he reviews the list of names. He asks his assistant if any of the requests come from South Korean guilds, and the assistant confirms that there are none. George Lucas comments that this is completely absurd, and that things have changed a lot. He instructs the assistant to reject all appointment requests and to proceed with the planned inauguration ceremony for his new academy. The scene shifts again, now focusing on a character named Baldy. He is approached by the man Sang had previously defeated in combat. The man says he has finally found Baldy after their last encounter. He asks Baldy how he managed to escape from a group he calls the Silver Moon Bastards. Baldy only replies that he received help without revealing the identity of his rescuers, then mentions that his companion Chang Won is quite tired. A knock was heard on the door, which was then thrown wide open. A man identified as Kanji immediately punched a chubby man with his fist, sending him flying across the room. Kanji then entered and asked who had attacked the members of the Silver Moon in the hunting ground. He warned the men present that they were the third group he had interrogated, and that the previous two had claimed to know absolutely nothing. Then, he wondered aloud if this group would also deny having any kind of information. The chubby man activated a skill and tried to punch Kanji, who blocked the attack without the slightest effort. Kanji stared at him intently. Then he grabbed his hand and forced him to the ground. After picking the man up again, Kanjin delivered a powerful punch to his head, causing a serious and very bloody wound. Seeing this, a bald man told Kanjin to stop, promising that he would tell him absolutely everything he wanted to know. Kanjin feigned confusion before punching the bald man hard in the mouth. He told the man that he be forced to talk one way or another and questioned why he was acting as if providing the information was such a generous offer. Kanjin then asked why he was protecting the chubby man, adding that he was going to die anyway, and punched the bald man again, knocking him into the ground. He then proceeded to stomp on him mercilessly. The man shouted for him to stop, admitting that he knew the identity of the person who attacked the Silver Moon, while begging for mercy. Kanjin stated his belief that any problem could be solved with his fists. The man was about to reveal Sam's identity. The scene changes to a frozen, icy region where Sam and his clones were traveling. Sam decided they should slow down and remain on high alert. He noted that although they hadn't encountered any monsters in a while, they had discovered numerous corpses. Zhang considered how difficult it would be to recover the bodies from such a place, and wondered what had killed so many people. Zhang asked one of his clones for their current position, and the clone confirmed they were near their final destination. He instructed them to look for any traces of battle left by an individual known as Team 1, mentioning that they should check everything before 2. Suddenly, a clone moved in front of Zhang, intercepting a stabbing attack from an invisible assailant. A large monster then materialized before him. Zhang was confused by the monster's sudden appearance and theorized that it might possess an invisibility skill, as the only evidence of its presence had been footprints on the frozen ground. An entire group of these creatures then completely surrounded them. Zhang realized that these undetectable monsters were responsible for the corpses he had found earlier. He tried to draw his dagger, but one of the creatures forcefully pushed him back. A clone positioned behind him immediately attacked and sliced the monster with precision as they fought. More invisible creatures kept appearing, becoming visible only when they attacked Zhang. He found it strange that his clones were able to block the monster's surprise attacks so easily. He decided to give control of his body to his main clone, number 1, so he could watch the fight carefully. Number 1 drew a cursed sword, and although he seemed to be negatively affected by the weapon, he didn't seem worried about it at all. Zhang blocked an invisible attack. Then, he sensed another from behind and took it down with a precise strike. He quickly determined that he could react to the monsters by listening to the sound of the wind their blades made as they swung. Zhang realized it wouldn't be easy at all to copy his clone's abilities, and that he still had a lot to learn. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon's subdimension, a member of the trapped party spoke to their captain, pointing out that it was almost 12 and they needed time to assess the situation immediately. The captain stood up and declared that she could no longer offer any words of hope to anyone. She was sure the day would be the same as the ones before, with the sound of ice being the first thing they would hear upon waking. However, the captain then heard a completely different sound. Outside, Zhang was trying to understand how his clones were able to detect the monsters with such precision. The creatures didn't have very high stats, but their invisibility made them a rather significant threat. His clones were accumulating numerous wounds from cuts and strikes, and their numbers didn't seem to be decreasing at all. It was impossible to estimate how many enemies were still left to face. Suddenly, a subdimension portal appeared before them. Zhang recognized it as the location of the attack team, and immediately sent all his clones running in that direction. From inside the portal, the captain saw a person approaching quickly. The group's initial reaction was restrained, but some were impressed as the figures got closer and closer. As he approached, Zhang covered his eyes and announced loudly that he had come to save them all, then asked them to save him in return for his help. After a brief hesitation, the captain ordered her squad into action. She instructed them to help the young man, and they deployed. With shields and magic, a defensive dome was formed while a member began an incantation, activating a magic arrow skill. Multiple powers struck the pursuing monsters, while Zhang kept running without stopping. The first clone managed to get inside the dome just in time, and the rescue party collapsed to the ground. The captain then sealed the entrance with her protective shield. The captain thanked Zhang, who identified himself as a member of Rescue Team Number 1. The group members didn't seem particularly impressed by his presence. After a moment, a woman asked him if he was from the Canis Guild. Zhang replied that he was, explaining that he had come at the request of Guildmaster Ilta. The man expressed his relief that their guild hadn't completely abandoned them. The captain then asked about the condition of Seong Tae, the team member who had managed to escape. Zhang confirmed that Seong Tae was alive, but that he had not yet fully regained consciousness. Zhang noticed her concern for her team, but interrupted to say that they needed to leave, reminding them that Ilta was waiting for their return. The woman informs Zhang that they can leave, as she has brought teleportation scrolls with her. Zhang notices that one scroll is missing from the original 10, and asks where it is. The woman hesitates for a moment before asking for another favor. Zhang asks what she wants, and she explains that one of their comrades died during the rescue mission. She recounts that their party was unexpectedly ambushed. Their healer was killed first, followed by an older team member. The woman expresses her desire to retrieve the body of their fallen comrade so that he isn't left behind in that place. She explains that during the chaos of the ambush, they opened a portal in order to escape. However, an invisible monster slipped through and killed the person handling the teleportation, forcing the survivors to flee immediately. Zhang understands her request and asks for the body's exact location. The woman opens a dimensional space to show him the area in detail. Zhang assesses that the location isn't extremely far, but retrieving the body will require dealing with many monsters. Since he can use his clones for the task, he agrees to help, but first, he sets two important conditions. He will abort the mission and withdraw everyone if he senses the slightest risk of failure. The group accepts this term without objection. Second, he insists on handling the recovery himself, completely alone. The others protest, questioning his decision to go alone. Zhang clarifies that he will use his clones, not his real body, which greatly surprises the woman. Meanwhile, a man named Ken Jinho is ruthlessly assaulting another man, Junmo. Ken Jinho is aware of Zhang's connection with Junmo's agency, and he breaks Junmo's arm during the interrogation. Junmo was being tortured for refusing to reveal Zhang's name, but Ken Jinho finds a document containing the information he was looking for. The document identifies Sang as Yang Sang-woo, a hunter from the GM agency. With Sang's name and address now known, his enemies can attack his family without hesitation. They are also aware of his cloning ability and realize they must find his original body in order to defeat him. Ken Jin-ho immediately sends his men to the address listed on the document. Unbeknownst, a woman is secretly observing the entire situation with great attention. She recognizes the attackers as members of the Silver Moon organization. The injured Junmo asks Ken Jin-ho why they are pursuing Sang so relentlessly. Ken Jin-ho explains that Sang defeated their crystal collection team. When Junmo feigns ignorance about the crystals, Ken Jin-ho calls him stubborn and obstinate, accusing Sang of stealing their crystals and fleeing, portraying himself and his group as the real victims. The current situation was quite complicated. The woman with Sang had stolen a highly valuable well, while Sang had only taken a bag of crystals. Despite this, she was now involved in imminent and real danger. In the subdimension, the woman commented that Sang's cloning ability was unlike any she had ever seen. Sang assured her that his clones were not mere illusions. He explained that she didn't need to worry about their lives, as he could simply resummon them if they were destroyed in combat. He then laid out his detailed plan. Clones number 4 and 6 would wait at the gate with a teleportation scroll, as a precautionary measure, while he and clones number 2 and 3, they would go in to retrieve the body and return immediately. The woman expressed her skepticism about the idea. The old man offered to help, but Sang refused, stating that it was his responsibility to ensure their safe escape. The woman then questioned his strategy, pointing out the inherent danger of using monsters to guarantee the safety of everyone. Sang insisted that this was the plan, and that its success depended entirely on her trust. After a moment, she reluctantly agreed to follow his lead. Sang drew his cursed sword. For the past 6 months, he had been increasing his stats by consuming crystals, which had also granted him a new special ability. This passive skill, called Monster Devour, gave him a 12% chance of absorbing a portion of a monster's stats every time he killed one. This was the main method he used to increase his attributes, although he was not yet completely satisfied with his current progress. Standing before the portal, Sang gave the order to open it immediately. He observed that the portal was powerful enough to consume mana explosions without any issues. He then instructed clone number 4 to pass him a sharp knife. After receiving it, Sang threw his sword and a container of demonic poison through the portal. He gave one final instruction, for everyone to evacuate immediately once the body was recovered. The woman then informed him that the monsters inside the dimension remained stationary, waiting for targets, which meant that the ones he brought would also stay in their original positions. With the plan set, Sang cracked his knuckles as the portal slowly opened. He gave the signal to advance and quickly dashed inside. Immediately, he located the body and began moving toward it without hesitation. He soon noticed a footprint that alerted him to the presence of a very close enemy. Outside, the remaining clones guarded the area and instructed the others to stay away. Some of the people offered to help, but the sister politely refused. She explained that their location was 40 kilometers from the main entrance, which meant that Sang must have a special method to cover that distance so quickly. She stated that they needed to trust him completely inside. While Sang was advancing, a monster attacked him from the right side. He blocked the blow, instinctively, which seemed to surprise his attacker. This defensive maneuver demonstrated his growing ability to sense and react to enemy attacks. However, he saw that a large group of enemies was mercilessly surrounding the woman's body. As he advanced toward the location, one of his clones was struck from behind with a deep gash. The monsters began to close in from all sides, prompting Sang to use a very specific strategy. He opened a pot and consumed a potion that instantly and significantly amplified his mana. With this boost, he fired a powerful projectile at a large corpse, an attack that effectively cleared the entire area of threats completely. In a separate location, observers were stunned by the diverse abilities of Sang, which included creating clones, wielding various weapons, and launching unparalleled devastating attacks. Sang asked an injured companion if he could still move, and the man confirmed that yes, he could. Sang then instructed him to retrieve a very specific body. As they did so, Sang sensed that the corpse's mana was dangerously unstable and about to explode at any moment. The body began to disintegrate, transforming into a form of dark and evil sorcery. Deciding to act as a decoy, Sang drew the enemy's attention to himself. An aura materialized above him, and he was quickly, completely surrounded. Meanwhile, 2 of his clones collected the body without delay. Sang then shouted for his companions to flee, before stomping on the ground with enough force to launch everyone into the air. The clones used this upward momentum to land in front of the others and run towards a nearby portal. The group successfully escaped, and one of the female members expressed her sincere gratitude after passing through the portal. The group began to cut a scroll to seal it off completely. An older man present warned them not to do it yet, pointing out that someone was still on the other side of the portal. Sang explained that it was just a clone, and that his survival could no longer be guaranteed at all. The clone, which seemed fully conscious, looked back at the group before they left for good. As a result of the battle, Sang's monster devourer skill had activated repeatedly. Through this ability, he absorbed the ice essence from numerous defeated creatures, which enhanced his strength, reflexes, mana, and resistance to extreme cold. The scene changes to another location, where an individual is carefully cutting an apple. This person is speaking to a man named Mr. Shang-Tai, informing him that the rescue mission was scheduled for that day, and that it might already be over. They urged him to wake up, at which point Mr. Shang-Tai's finger twitched slightly. Back at the guild's base, inside the tower, a portal suddenly opened. The guild members rushed towards it, excitedly anticipating the team's return. A hand emerged first, causing the onlookers to become very frightened. A young woman recognized the person coming out as her brother, and overcome with emotion, began to cry inconsolably. Elsewhere, Sam regained consciousness in a chair, feeling somewhat dazed. It was noted that this was the first time he had ever employed such a self-destructive tactic in his life. His sister was with him, and tried to maintain a serene and calm demeanor. Monta hugs a woman, telling her to be quiet, and assuring her that everything is okay now, though he also affectionately calls her an idiot. In response, she begins to cry her eyes out. The woman explains that she was terrified, and had been sure that no one would ever be able to rescue them. She feels responsible for what happened to another woman during the incident. As they have their emotional reunion, a group of people watches them intently. Elsewhere, the man who had been hospitalized finally regains consciousness completely. Later, Sang is checking his stats when a clone appears, and returns his sword to him. He is pleased to see that his attributes have increased very significantly. Wanda then approaches and addresses him as Mr. Hunter, formally thanking him in Japanese. Sam replies that he accepted the job because of the high pay they offered. Wantas dismisses this and promises that from now on he will provide all the help Sang needs at any time. He clarifies that Sang only needs to inform him of any problems that might arise. Sang later approaches Wantas to return a scroll he didn't use during the rescue mission. Wantas initially tells him to keep any unused items from the expedition as his own. Sang refuses the offer, insisting that the scroll belongs to the guild and he would feel bad keeping it for himself. Wantas then takes the scroll back into his hands. The sister expresses her surprise, commenting that Sang had apparently been present with them the entire time. Wantas explains that Sang remained motionless, using a known skill to control his creatures from a distance. The sister now believes the explanation, admitting she previously thought it was a tale made up to reassure them. Wantas observes Sang and reflects on how powerful he could become in the future. Outside, Sang comments to Wantas that he will probably be busy now. Wantas confirms it, saying he must check on everyone's health and also make funeral arrangements. Sang's phone, which was inactive inside the dungeon, suddenly receives many notifications. He checks the messages and is shocked to learn that Junmo has been kidnapped by members of Silver Moon. The message includes Junmo's current location, which is being tracked. Sang becomes visibly angry and informs Wantas that he must leave immediately. When Wantas asks why, Sang explains that Silver Moon has kidnapped Junmo. Wantas questions the motive, and Sang speculates that it's retaliation for his previous conflict with one of their members in the hunting ground. Hearing this, Wantas pulls a scroll from his jacket and offers it to Sang for his journey. Sang initially refuses, but Wantas insists, reminding him of his promise to provide full support. At the entrance of the Silver Moon Guild, a group of people is gathered and is waiting nearby. A young woman observes the scene when someone calls her by name. A woman is stopped by an unknown man who questions her presence there before she can be harmed. Sang emerges from a portal behind them, acting fast to choke an assailant, while two of his clones surround another with knives. The woman is stunned by the speed of the intervention as a henchman is heard struggling violently. Nearby, the woman urges Sang to stop, explaining that they need to get information from the man he is subduing. Agreeing, Sang ties up the assailants and asks for the captive's location. The woman informs him that Junmo was taken to the Silver Moon Guild's warehouse. Sang tells her to wait where she is, while he prepares to gather his allies. Inside the warehouse, Junmo is being held captive by a man named Kang Win. Junmo has been beaten repeatedly. Kang Win asks him why his group decided to interfere with their guild, while Junmo wonders if his associate Sang Woo will come to rescue him. One of Kang Win's men reports that Sang Woo is abroad and won't be back for several hours. Just as the captors consider ordering food, a powerful blow strikes the door. The metal door is cut from the outside and bursts open inward. Sang enters and asks the men if they are from the Silver Moon Guild. Kang Win expresses surprise, saying he expected Sang's arrival much later. Some of his men, who seem to know about Sang's abilities, ask about his other masked companions, which leads Kang Win to order them to capture the clones. While a weakened Junmo yells at him to stop, Sang confronts the guild members with an expression of intense rage. The first man who attacks receives an elbow to the chin that dislocates his jaw, followed by Sang grabbing him and breaking his arm. When another henchman in a suit steps in to help, Sang breaks his arm as well, with all his subordinates quickly incapacitated on the floor. Kang Win calls them useless. He observes that Sang defeated them all without moving from his initial position. Kang Win calls for a pause, stating that he wants to ask a question as a precaution. He then asks Sang where he has been hiding the crystals. Sang seems confused by the question, remembering only that he had picked up some ordinary stones. He warns Kang Gwen that he has crossed a line and that the conflict won't end peacefully. Kang Gwen retorts that Sang is the arrogant one, revealing that he investigated Sang's office and acknowledges his physical strength based on the ease with which he defeated the henchman. Kang Gwen estimates that Sang is at least a B-class hunter with high stats. Kang Gwen continues his analysis, mocking Sang for having what he considers a useless cloning ability. Despite his impressive stats, he speculates that Sang's only other ability must be a concentrated attack. Kang Gwen claims that this weakness explains why Sang partnered with a low-level agency, commenting that inferior individuals flock together. In response to the insults, Sang simply offers a calm acknowledgement. Sang's clones arrive on the scene, immediately changing the balance of the confrontation. The opposing group is now at a disadvantage. Kang Gwen's subordinates become visibly nervous, and one of them reports that the men stationed in the rear have been defeated. Kang Gwen replies that he was already aware of this, calling his subordinate an idiot. With his reinforcements, Sang is no longer outnumbered and holds a dagger. Kang Gwen decides to use an invisibility skill. One of his men expresses confidence, stating that Kang Gwen will surely win, because only a user with a specific detection class could counter such a stealth ability. While invisible, Kang Gwen believes that conventional methods of sensing presence or aura are useless against his ability, which he thinks erases his existence completely. He moves to attack from behind, but notices that Sang's clones seem to be looking towards his position. Still, he is confident that Sang cannot detect him and that the fight will be over soon. Just as Kang Gwen gets close, Sang orders his clones to capture him. The clones immediately capture the surprised Kang Gwen, effectively immobilizing him. Sang then instructs some of his clones to transport the injured Junmo to the hospital. The scene changes to a bar, where Sang's college friends are having drinks. They are celebrating the start of their third year, and a friend comments that it's still just the three of them, asking if none of them plan on finding a girlfriend. Another friend, the one with glasses, asks if anyone has seen Sang Woo, mentioning that no one has heard from him in a while. They confirm that Sang Woo changed his number and doesn't respond to messages. A third friend reveals that he heard Sang Woo now works as a hunter. The news surprises the others, who find it hard to reconcile the idea of the seemingly kind Sang Woo killing monsters. A friend suggests that they have simply never seen Sang Woo truly angry. He asks the friend who was Sang Woo's neighbor if he ever saw him lose his temper. The neighbor recalls an incident from when they used to walk home from school together. He explains that he was being assaulted by a group of gangsters when Sang Woo arrived. The friend told him to leave for his safety, but instead, Sang Woo returned and headbutted one of the attackers. The friend clarifies that Sang Woo didn't save him. They both got beaten up. He also learned later that Sang Woo had been targeted by the same group before. The friend comments on Sang Woo's character, noting that despite his calm demeanor, he would lash out without thinking when provoked. The friend concludes that Sang Woo was tolerant when he was attacked himself, but became aggressive when his friends were threatened. Back in the present, a surprised Kangen asks Sang how he was able to detect him. Sang notes Kangen's confidence in his ability and then explains that he had just finished fighting a group of monsters that used the exact same ability. Sang reminds Kangen of his earlier insults, recalling that Kangen had despised his ability as trash and had warned him not to come here. After the battle in Odin's tower, Sang's stats showed a significant increase, with almost 10 points added to each stat and his cold resistance, rising to 19. He acted decisively, launching one of his opponents a considerable distance. His clones reported that one enemy had escaped, but all the others had been subdued. Sang instructed them to take Junmu to the hospital for treatment, telling him not to worry. Nearby, the defeated Kangen struggled to get up. He thought about the official report that listed Sang's strength at only 19, a clearly inaccurate number. Given the current circumstances, he also noticed that Sang's clones were formidable, realizing that being caught by even 2 of them would be decisive. Convinced that such a large increase in stats was impossible without external help, Kanji scanned his opponent and noticed a potion in Sang's pocket. Kanji managed to stand up and addressed Sang, admitting that he had underestimated him and hadn't expected such a response. He claimed he wouldn't make that mistake again, and that he would demonstrate the power of a true B-class hunter. His own stats revealed 25 in strength and 35 in reflexes. He declared that Sang hadn't seen all of his capabilities yet and launched an attack. Sang simply stated that he had no interest in seeing everything a man had as he moved forward. Kanji realized that his movements were being detected. He concluded that, as unlikely as it seemed, they were sensing the air currents around them to counter this. He began to move in a way that stirred the air, creating a noisy environment to mask his position. Sang observed that his opponent's speed would now make it harder to react. Despite the chaotic movement, Sang turned and blocked an incoming attack, then struck Kanji on the head, calling him an idiot. Sang explained that the resulting smoke and dust made his opponent's position even easier to see. Kanji was knocked to the ground, where he began to laugh maniacally. Sang asked what was so funny. He then discovered that, during the exchange, Kanji had managed to steal the potion from his pocket. Kanji held it up, explaining that he knew something was unusual about Sang's stats, and asked if the potion was the source of his power-up. Sang advised him that it would be better not to drink the potion. Kanji ignored the warning and consumed the entire vial. His strength stat began to rise rapidly, climbing from 29 to 37, and then to 51, causing the ground beneath him to crack. Empowered, Kanji told Sang he could no longer hear him, because his own strength was now too great. In response, Sang told him not to blame him for the consequences. Sang noted internally that his opponent's strength had more than doubled, a feat beyond even a top-tier potion. Kanjin then demanded that Sang reveal the creator of the potion, promising in return to let him go with at least 2 arms. Sang observed his opponent, having already sent clones 4 and 6 to the hospital. Now, only he and clones 2 and 3 remained to face the man named Kanjin. The 2 made eye contact, and Kanjin charged immediately. Sang moved to intercept him, but Kanjin's powerful advance knocked down the clones. Sang tried to attack with his sword, but Kanjin struck him first, leaving him unstable. Kanjin then asked Sang if he understood his mistake, revealing that he had done more than just read Sang's stats. He informed Sang that his family was also being targeted. The scene then briefly cut to Sang's parents at home, where an unknown person had just knocked on their door. Back in the fight, Kanjin stabbed Sang repeatedly, inflicting numerous cuts. The force of the attacks was enough to drag Sang across the floor. As 2 more opponents appeared from behind, the clones moved to engage them. Sang, bleeding onto his blade, countered with a powerful strike that broke Kanjin's sword in half. Furious, Kanjin activated a skill and struck Sang directly. The blow launched Sang backward, causing him to crash into a wall on the other side of the room. At the same time, another clone was punched in the stomach. Kanjin dodged an attack from behind and countered with a blow to his attacker's jaw. As this was happening, Sang began to feel the effects of a potion he had consumed earlier. His friends, watching from a safe distance, commented on Sang's overconfidence. Sang told them to shut up, claiming that he would win. He then asked Sang if he had a backup plan, but Sang only instructed everyone else to take cover. Kanjin seemed annoyed by Sang's refusal to surrender and questioned why he was still fighting. Sang was stalling for time, waiting for the potion to take full effect. Kanjin pulled out his phone and told Sang he would order some photographs to clarify the situation. He spoke into the device, asking his subordinates if they had arrived at the location yet, and giving them precise instructions to cut off their target's fingers and send him the pictures. Suddenly, Kanjin lost control of his arm and dropped the phone. He collapsed to the floor as his body began to seize up. It was a melted slime-like appearance. Zhang commented that the potion was finally taking effect. The substance was dissolving Kanjin's muscles, leaving him very confused and quite weak. Zhang reminded Kanjin that he had warned him not to drink it. Panicking, Kanjin reached for his phone intending to call for reinforcements and have Zhang's parents brought as hostages. With his arm visibly deteriorating to skin and bones, Kanjin threatened that Zhang's parents would die if he didn't receive an antidote. However, a voice from the active call on the phone interrupted him. The person on the other end reported that Kanjin's men had attacked the wrong family and had run into the Canis Guild. A large, bearded man from the guild had defeated all the intruders. It was this same man who had knocked on Zhang's parents' door while holding a man with one arm. Zhang's father asked about his son's condition. Zhang confirmed that he was unharmed. The men outside still showed a clear intention to fight, but at that exact moment, a man named Kanjin received a phone call. After looking at his phone, Kanjin started screaming as his body seemed to transform into a zombie-like state without any action from Zhang. Zhang grabbed the transformed Kanjin and advised him to save his energy, just to breathe. He then grabbed Kanjin's arm and warned him never to touch anyone he cared about, thus ending the confrontation. A woman nearby watched the scene in shock. Sometime later, Zhang went to the hospital to talk with Junmo. Since visiting hours were over, he entered the room through the window. Junmo noticed blood on Zhang's face and asked him what had happened. Zhang explained that he was fine, thanks to his regeneration ability, and warned Junmo that the group known as the Silver Moon was not done with them yet. He then asked Junmo for his opinion on whether he should undergo a re-evaluation for his hunter classification. Junmo agreed, pointing out that Zhang's rank had already increased after the gate incident, but he hadn't completed any official reclassification tests since then. Zhang explained that before, he had no interest in power itself, since his only goals were to become strong enough to protect his loved ones and pay his sister's hospital bills. Junmo asked what had made him change his mind. Zhang reasoned that if he had a higher classification as a high ranker, Silver Moon wouldn't have dared to attack them, or the JM agency office, which is why he was now seeking a higher rank. Junmo agreed that it would be excellent for the agency's publicity, but warned that it would also attract considerable attention and could lead to more frequent confrontations. Zhang confirmed that his decision was final. The scene changes to Zhang arriving at a facility to retake his evaluation. An evaluator named Song Wu, who possessed a cloning ability, asked Zhang if he had come alone, commenting that the test was normally conducted by a group. Junmo had previously explained that lower rank hunters are evaluated in groups because monsters are usually stronger than a hunter of the same rank, but Zhang's abilities were an exception. Zhang simply informed the evaluator that he had always operated alone. Zhang Wu explained that to be reclassified, Zhang needed to kill a monster, one classification above his own, and submit proof to the association. Zhang asked if it was possible to skip the rank D, C, and B tests all at once. The evaluator denied the request, stating that a hunter can only register for the test immediately above their current rank. Zhang then asked about his assigned monster. The evaluator told him to kill a fishman, warning him that its skin was extremely tough and impervious to bullets. After receiving the assignment, Zhang walked over to a chair, sat down, and started looking at his phone. 2 hours later, Songwoo saw that Song hadn't gone out to hunt and wondered if he was even serious about the test. Just then, Zhang stood up and returned to the evaluator's desk. Songwoo asked him if he wanted to cancel the test. Song replied that he had already hunted the monster. When the evaluator asked for clarification, Zhang confirmed that he had killed the fishman and had already submitted the proof. Zhang requested to be registered as a D-class hunter. The association employee was skeptical, pointing out that Zhang had been sitting in front of him drinking coffee and that it was impossible for him to have completed the hunt he required beforehand. The employee, who hadn't seen Zhang leave the building, was unaware that one of Zhang's clones had gone to the hunting ground. He told Zhang to check the confirmation himself, as it had already been sent from the hunting ground. The employee then reluctantly checked the system and found the official confirmation that John Sang-woo had successfully hunted a number 5 fishman. Confused by the result, the employee called the hunting ground to verify Zhang's activity. The staff on the other end confirmed that Zhang had indeed hunted and killed a monster there. The employee wondered aloud if the system had malfunctioned. Zhang, who had been waiting patiently, asked if there was a resolution. The employee, privately suspecting some form of cheating, agreed to process the rank upgrade. The employee officially promoted Zhang to D-class, but informed him that he would report the unusual circumstances of the test. In response, Zhang immediately asked to be registered for the class evaluation. Later that night, a girl was walking with a bag of crystals while talking to Zhang. She apologized to him, admitting it was her fault that Jam had been attacked. She then confessed that she was the one who had stolen the crystal jewels from the field. Upon hearing her confession, Sang's expression turned serious. The girl got scared, wondering why she had told him the truth. After witnessing their previous actions, however, Sang reassured her, stating that the fault was not hers, but belonged to those who had tried to harm him and his family. He told her not to worry, clarifying that the matter of the stolen crystals was an issue between her and Silver Moon and that he would not get involved. He also pointed out that she was unaware of what Silver Moon and Haitian had done to him. The girl, trembling, put on her hat, thanked him, and quickly ran away. Back at the Hunter Association, the same employee informed Sang that he had passed the evaluations for both Class and B Class. Sang stood up and declared that he was done for the day. Surprised, the employee repeated his words as a question. At that moment, another official arrived and commented that Sang had finally made it. The first official asked if he knew Sang, and the second man confirmed that he did, identifying Sang as the individual with the unique permit to enter multiple hunting grounds at once. The second official elaborated, mentioning the doctor who had evaluated Sang's ability. He recounted that the doctor was so deeply affected by what he saw that he told everyone about the unique ability. The official commented that it was strange Sang hadn't ranked up until now. He predicted that the news of a hunter advancing from E Class to B Class in a single day would cause a huge stir in the hunter community. 1 week later, the newspapers were filled with stories about the hunter, nicknamed Clonuto. The reports detailed his unprecedented rise from E Class to B Class in a single day, calling it the fastest rank up in history. The public learned that his clones were real entities, not illusions. During this time, Sang received a payment of 5 billion. Sang was shocked by the sum of money. Taiwan explained that it was his payment for a successful mission. Sang protested that the amount was too much, but Taiwan clarified that, although he had initially framed the request as a favor, it was a formal job. He insisted that Sang accept the payment, arguing that no one else would have taken the mission, and the problem would have remained unsolved without him. Taiwan concluded by inviting Sang to visit the guild in the future. Sang collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed with relief. He realized that his financial worries were over, and that he now possessed enough money to take care of his sister. He decided he would use the funds to hire the S-rank healer, known as Bless. Sang imagined his first encounter with the healer, visualizing himself grabbing the man's legs and begging, with such intensity that the healer would be forced to accept the job. Meanwhile, the leader of the Silver Moon Guild was angry about the defeat of Kang and Zhou. He questioned the strategy of taking over all the assets of the YOLO Guild, as it left them with no one to process their crystals. The leader decided to destroy the incriminating documents to hide his activities. At that moment, a woman named Yang Yochiol appeared. She commented on the leader's strength and accused a person named Shikargi of stealing a stash of items. The leader of Silver Moon suggested there had been a misunderstanding and proposed a conversation, but he simultaneously attacked her with a punch. She parried the blow with her claws. In the Canis Guild office, Junmo met with Taiwoon and other members. He thanked Taiwoon for sending agents to protect San's family. Taiwoon deduced incorrectly that Silver Moon was the attacking party. Junmo confirmed this and stated that he did not consider the conflict to be over, especially with Kang and Ho's involvement. Taiwoon recognized Kang and Ho as the vice leader of Silver Moon and recalled that Sang had left him in a state of permanent disability. It was then revealed that Junmo had previously managed Kang and Ho when he worked at the Heisen Guild. The connection between the Hazon and Silver Moon Guilds was already well known. Yang Yochiol then arrived at the Canis Guild office. She reported that the members of Silver Moon, whom she called bastards, were manufacturing crystals and jewels to supply the Hazon Guild. She handed files to Junmo as proof and greeted Junmo, stating that she had heard a lot about him and referred to him as a madman. In response, Junmo mentioned that he knew she had recently visited Silver Moon. She confirmed that she had been there briefly and to retrieve some items. Taiwoon asked for clarification on a term he had heard, DRP. Yang Yochiol explained that it was a body-enhancing drug made from the jewels and that the Heisen Guild was heavily involved in its production, indicating that the substance was extremely dangerous. The narration then provided some historical context about the hunter profession. The occupation was legalized only after the end of a great catastrophe. Systems were established by the government to manage hunting grounds with soldiers, record hunting profits, and officially purchase monster byproducts. Although this framework made the job seem stable, not all hunters agreed with the new regulations. A group of hunters opposed the mandatory identity registration and hunting restrictions. These individuals formed their own clandestine society, operating in secret and using illegal weapons to protect their income. It is revealed that Yang Yuchiol is a member of this clandestine society. The scene shifts to her arriving at a bar with a large quantity of crystals. The bartenders were visibly surprised by the immense amount she had brought with her. Sang advised the woman not to retrieve the items. She smiled and explained that she had found them abandoned at the station. In response, Sang frowned. Suddenly, a group of men appeared and approached a woman named Wu Jian, informing her that she had to go with them. The men were likely from a guild. Wu Jian tried to ask the bartender for help, but he refused, explaining that the men were threatening his family at that moment. Another individual stepped forward to intervene. One of the men questioned the identity of the newcomer and his formal attire. The newcomer confronted the man and told him to step aside. When the man tried to talk back, he was punched in the jaw. As he started to retreat, he noticed that Sang had arrived on the scene. The narration then shifts to a flashback. In the past, Sang had informed Wu Haiyan that he would help her now that she was part of the GM agency. He instructed her to try and sell the crystals she had collected, predicting that her opponents would take the bait. The scene shifts to an undisclosed location, where the Heisen guildmaster, a man named Shin, was being searched by guards. They informed him that he had 10 minutes. He laughed as a door was opened for him. Inside, he met a woman known as the Oracle. She acknowledged his presence, and Shin asked if his arrival was unexpected or if she was playing with him. She claimed she knew what he wanted, and that her answer had not changed. She advised him to give up and be content with his current life. Shin became angry, reminding her that she had once prophesied that all the powerful people would bow before him one day. The Oracle explained that his destiny had been drastically altered due to the influence of another individual. Shin demanded to know who had interfered with his destiny, but she claimed to have no knowledge of their identity. The scene returns to Sang, who was interrogating one of the captured men. Sang held up a phone and demanded the password, calling the man a fool. The captive refused to cooperate, stating that he would rather die. Sang assured the man he wouldn't be killed, but instead handed over to another group of menacing-looking individuals who were also present. The captive began to sweat nervously. Meanwhile, Shin Jin-wook, the leader of Team 1 of Haisong, received a call. The caller reported that he had secured the crystals, and Shin Jin-wook instructed him to take them to Factory 3. Then asked why the caller's voice sounded strange, but the man on the phone claimed everything was fine, and that his team was heading to the factory at that moment. Shin Jin-wook concluded by reminding him to monitor the DEP production. Sang had been listening to the entire phone conversation and commented that everything was going perfectly. He then demanded the captive reveal the factory's location. The man protested that he would be killed if he told him. In response, Sang addressed the group of menacing men, announcing that the captive wanted to go with them. At this, the men drew their knives. After this threat, the captive provided the factory's location. Sang then instructed Buja to send the address to a person named Junmo. She thanked Sang for his help, but he showed little reaction. A woman approaches Sang and asks him to play in a game. She mentions having seen news about the Cloneto and asks if this is the reason all her companions look the same. Sang confirms it, and the woman asks if he was paying attention and if he knows her name. He replies that he does, identifying her as the potion creator, the woman Kim Woo-hyun. She playfully pretends to choke him before asking where his clones are. Sang explains that they are busy, as he had left them to have a barbecue while he ran errands. Upon receiving the audio of Sang's conversation, Junmo recognizes the voice of Shin Jin-wook, the individual behind their recent troubles. This confirms for both of them that Shin Jin-wook and his associates are involved. King Wu Haiyan explains that there are 5 crystal suppliers for the guild. Hisong with Silver Moon, Red Tail, and other guilds, all at least B rank, still remain. Junmo asks why they don't attack Hisong directly, since selling crystals is illegal. She acknowledges the idea but points out the difficulty, as Hisong is led by Korea's strongest hunter, Wanta. She advises Junmo to be cautious and avoid walking alone. Junmo agrees and says he will also warn Sunwoo. Taiwan comments that Sunwoo probably doesn't need such a warning, as it seems unlikely anyone could successfully kidnap him. Junmo then sends a message to Sang, confirming that the material is a component for a drug called DEP. He tells King Woojin to stay in the office until the situation is resolved. She asks if the office wrecked by Silver Moon has been repaired yet. Sang replies that she will be surprised when she sees the new office. Junmo arrives to show Kim Woojin the new office, extensively renovated, which now includes new meeting rooms and a fully equipped laboratory specifically for her. Junmo also points out that there are rooms in the back where she can stay if needed. As she reacts to the offer, Junmo receives a phone call, and his expression changes drastically. The call was to inform him of an emergency at the hospital that required Sang's immediate presence. Meanwhile, at the Silver Moon warehouse, a man stands over a pool of blood on the floor and calls for someone to come out. A slime-like entity emerges from the ground, followed by several masked figures. The man asks for Yang Yuchil's location, who he is told is being held in the guild's basement. Yolo, the masked figure, confirms that everything, including the crystals, was taken and that their enemies seem to know the factory's location, likely due to Sang's investigation. The main figure then hands vials to his subordinate, instructing him on who to use them on. He states that if his enemies want the drug, he will give it to them, even in its imperfect state. In the guild's basement, Yolo, Yang Yuchil is still tied up when the slime creature appears. The creature is holding a syringe containing the drug, injecting the substance into Yang's neck. Elsewhere, Bunta and a female colleague are walking, discussing their plan to extract information from Yang. She teases him, suggesting that he is only accompanying her to prevent her from being kidnapped. Suddenly, she smells something burning and notices a large amount of smoke. They both start running towards the source. In the middle of a fire, a transformed monster is discovered. Nearby, an injured civilian is found on the ground. When asked, the man explains that a monster had appeared in the basement and that the B-class squad couldn't defeat it. This information suggests that the creature is at least an A-rank monster. A woman at the scene wonders how the monster appeared without a portal. Then, she recognizes a distinctive scar on its face and identifies the creature as Yang Chil. In a separate location, Kangen is in a hospital bed in a weakened state. A masked individual appears and prepares to inject him with a substance. A woman carrying a digital panel confronts the intruder, telling him that he won't be allowed to do as he pleases. The masked man disappears and reappears by her side, threatening to use the injection on her instead. Just then, Sang arrives and hits the man with a shoulder tackle to the chest. Meanwhile, the battle against the monster, Yang Chil, continues, causing explosions and destroying buildings. The fighters are perplexed because they knew Yang Chil as a strong B-rank hunter, not as an A-rank monster. One of the women recalls a past conversation about a substance called DEP that was used for body enhancement. Seeing Yang Chil transformed, she realizes the connection and deduces that their enemies are probably attacking the Silver Moon Guild. This means that Kangen is also in danger. At the hospital, it's revealed that Siona, the woman with the digital panel, had contacted Junmo, who in turn alerted Sang, allowing for his timely intervention. During the fight, the monster roars. A female hunter summons a creature resembling a nine-tailed fox, which fires an energy projectile that pierces the monster's chest. The creature counterattacks with a punch, but another fighter named Guanta severs its arm before it can land the blow. The monster attacks again, revealing a cybernetic arm, and uses a powerful move to push back both hunters. They recognize the technique as one of the signature attacks of Yang Chil, thus confirming his identity. Suddenly, an older man wielding a flaming sword appears and strikes the monster. He is identified as Gan, the leader of the Soul Guild, approaches the two fighters and demands that Wanta explain the creature's origin. Back at the hospital, Sang tells the masked man that only doctors are allowed to use needles. He then attacks, but the man stops the blow. The masked man asks Sang how he knew he was there. Sang's companion tries to attack with fire, but the intruder nullifies her power with a simple hand gesture. Sang attacks from above with a powerful kick that sends the man flying and breaks his arm. Afterward, Sang and his companions stand before their opponent. A girl thanks Sang for his quick arrival. The masked man, observing Sang's power and the appearance of his clones, remarks that he now understands how Kanjin was defeated. The clones, taller than before, stare intently at the masked man. He acknowledges that Sang is trying to provoke him into a fight, but states he's not foolish enough to take them all on. As he disappears, he promises to see Sang again, adding that a person named Vegas is heading for Sang's sister, who is in the Mana Absorption Intensive Care Unit. The threat against his sister makes Sang react with great anger. Following this confrontation, the recent monster outbreak in the city is officially resolved by the leaders of three guilds, Soul, Yolo, and Canes. A man named Gan tried to inform the public that someone named Hisong was responsible, but his claims were dismissed. The official story was that a simple containment breach had occurred, absolving Hisong of any involvement. Another individual also tried to reveal the truth, but their efforts proved futile. Investigators later located the crystal's original position, but the place was deserted upon their arrival. The EDP production facility was also found completely empty. For a time, monster appearances were reported, and humanoids all over the city. but they were constantly defeated. Eventually, the sightings ceased and the public forgot about the incidents, leaving the matter as an unsolved mystery. Sometime later, Sam speaks with Junmo, stating that they need a bodyguard. He explains that he has been considering this since the Silver Moon incident, deciding that security must be prioritized over household efficiency. He correctly assumes that Sam plans to use his clones for this task. Sam confirms that this is the only viable option, as he lacks the funds to hire a hunter powerful enough for the job, needing to save money for his sister's treatment by an S-rank hunter. Sang details his plan for the clones. 1. Will protect his parents at home, 2. Will remain at the hospital with his sister, and a 4th will be stationed at Yunmo's agency. 2 additional clones will be dedicated to training and exercise, continuously. This leaves the original Sang free to act independently. When Junmo asks about the 7th and final clone, Sang reveals he has sent it to a familiar place, the Canis Guild training grounds in Odin's Tower. Inside the tower, the clone uses a megaphone to announce its presence, attracting nearby monsters. Invisible creatures begin to charge toward its position, followed by the appearance of a horde of monsters identified as Spawn Wood 30. In response, the clone consumes a potion, which causes a huge explosion. The scene shifts to the opening ceremony of the branch of the Korean Hunter Academy, led by its president Haksu. The mission of the academy is to support low-rank hunters, providing free skill training and methods to increase their item drop rates. It is open to all hunters, regardless of their rank or talent, offering them the opportunity to train with veterans. The academy also promises that the student with the best performance at the end of the year will receive an elixir, although its properties are not specified. Meanwhile, in the agency's private gym, Hyam Sang and his clones continue their training. Sang struggles with his training, as the 250-kilogram dumbbells he uses are no longer enough to increase his strength. He cannot find heavier weights to buy, such as 1-ton dumbbells, while Sang watches television. He watches a broadcast about the opening of a new academy branch, dismissing it as insignificant, until the hosts reveal the grand prize, a legendary elixir highly coveted by hunters all over the world. Although the elixir's specific properties are unknown, Sang's interest is immediately captured. The broadcast shows the Hunter Academy, a grand institution designed to look like a European castle. Zulema promises that any student can learn new skills and overcome their weaknesses, trusting in the academy's system. Feeling skeptical, Sang asks his acquaintance, Jumbo, if the elixir prize is real. Jumbo confirms that it is, explaining that the academy is offering it to attract applicants from all countries. Sang finds it strange that a simple academy branch would possess such a rare item. Jumbo corrects him, stating that the institution is important because it was founded by George Lucas, known as the Soul Jumper. Sang remains puzzled as to why George Lucas, the owner of one of the world's largest corporations, would establish an academy and give away an elixir. Jumbo agrees that the motive is unclear, but speculates it's an effort to reduce the power gap between low-rank and high-rank hunters. By improving the skills of average hunters, they could reduce casualties during monster-related incidents. Jumbo also adds that the academy seems to prefer applicants with weaker skills. Hearing this, Sang regrets having worked to rank up so quickly. However, Jumbo assures him that he might still qualify for admission based on other criteria. Jumbo then points out that Sang's low-quality skills are an advantage. His main skills, Strong Blow and Magic Bullet, are both F-rank, while a typical B-rank hunter would have around 70 skills of various grades. Sang has managed to advance using only his base stats and his clones. Patting him on the shoulder, Jumbo tells Sang that his lack of quality skills makes him a guaranteed candidate for admission. When Sang asks him to stop, Jumbo mentions a donation-based admission system. Sang asks for more details, and Jumbo reminds him of the prize money he won from the Canis incident. Sang considers the cost, believing that even 5,000, 1,000, or 1,011 would be a worthy price to cure his sister with the elixir. Later, at an event, the president of the academy gives a speech, publicly acknowledges Sang, stating that it is an honor to have him. Embarrassed, Sang replies that he isn't special, but the president praises him and reveals that Sang donated 2.5 billion won to the school. Sang thanks him, but privately feels the situation is suspicious, as if he had simply bought his way in. He reaffirms to himself that he would pay even 10 billion won to acquire the elixir. Around him, other guests whisper, identifying him as Jin Sang-woo, the clone user, and wonder if he himself is a clone. Sang ignores them, thinking that with his current level, he is sure he can make it to the year-end competition. the director announced that 2 B-rank hunters would be enrolling in the academy that year. Sang learned that the identity of the second B-rank hunter was confidential, but that this individual was supposedly as famous as he was. Sang immediately recognized this new student as competition for the elixir he aimed to acquire. During orientation, Professor Kang Hae-suk was introduced as the instructor for a class called Basic Food Magic. Since it was the first day, no formal classes were held. Sang was curious about the other B-rank hunter, but he remained focused on his goal. Later, a student announced a welcome party for the new students at the Vargo Leon. Sang decided to attend, thinking it would be a good opportunity to identify his competitor. At the bar, Sang found the place to be very crowded. He was quickly surrounded by other students, particularly a group of women who recognized him. They asked if he was the clone user who had killed the monster, expressing their admiration for his achievements, then asked him to demonstrate his ability by creating a clone. Sang refused, stating that his clones were currently busy with a mission. He took the opportunity to ask the students if they knew the identity of the other B-rank hunter. They didn't know of any other B-rank hunter enrolling, and said the online news had only mentioned Sang's admission. Sang concluded that the other student was deliberately keeping a low profile and was probably not at the party. Deciding to leave, he announced his departure to the group. The female students urged him to stay and offered him a large alcoholic drink. Sang consumed the entire drink, thanked them, and left the bar, leaving the others surprised. Due to his poison resistance, the alcohol had no effect on him. As he walked, he reflected on how his life had become more serious, leaving him little time to socialize like he used to with friends in the past. As he was on his way, an individual wearing a cap approached and asked him how to get into the student party. Sam gave him directions and mentioned that the event was still going on. The person asked him why he was leaving so early. Sam explained that he was heading home because he didn't know anyone there. He then recognized the person's voice, just as she asked him if he would like to get a drink with her. The person was Jan, one of his former students. She confirmed that he should recognize her. Sam asked why she was at the academy, and she revealed that she was also a new student. He questioned if this meant she had failed the college entrance exam he had helped her study for. Jan avoided answering, and instead commented on the cold weather and repeated her desire to get a drink. Sam understood that he needed to stay and have a drink to get the information he wanted. The woman ordered a drink, and Sam asked about her exam results, suggesting she had failed. She denied it, clarifying that she had passed her exam successfully. Confused, Sam asked why she was at the academy if she had gotten into college. She explained that becoming a hunter was her true dream, and that she had only applied to college to satisfy her parents' wishes. Her personal goal was always to get a hunter's license. After graduating, the new academy provided her with an opportunity, and she managed to convince her parents to let her enroll. Despite their concerns, they warned her it was dangerous, but she persisted until they agreed. Then she asked Sam to explain his reasons for being at the academy, calling him teacher, and embarrassed Sam told her to stop using that title, as he no longer held that role. The woman pointed out that since they had enrolled together, he wasn't her senior, and, in a playful tone, called him by another nickname. She noticed his discomfort, and then told him to look at her. After consuming several alcoholic drinks, the woman got drunk. She asked for another drink, but Sang told her to stop. She was resting her head on the table when, suddenly, she looked up and asked for his new phone number. Upon receiving it, she expressed her satisfaction, stating that now he had no excuse not to contact her before passing out. Quickly, Sang proceeded to pay the bill for their drinks. Sometime later, the woman regained consciousness and found herself being carried on Sang's back. Confused, she asked why she was on his back, if she had fallen asleep, and if they were heading home. Sang confirmed that she was awake and explained that she had fallen asleep at the counter. The woman complained of dizziness and being unable to walk, so she held on to Sang as he carried her on his back. She asked why he hadn't contacted them in months, adding that he could have found a way, even with a different number. She confessed that she had initially planned to punch him out of anger, but couldn't bring herself to do it after seeing him. She concluded by saying she had enjoyed their time together. Sang replied that he had a specific goal to achieve, which was his reason for enrolling in the academy. He confirmed that he had also had fun, calling it the best day he had experienced in the last 6 months, and noting that he was still a young man. He detailed his recent actions, describing himself as fundamentally lazy. He feared that his determination would fade if he continued with his old lifestyle, which would lead him to repeat the same mistakes and regrets. Believing that people don't change easily, he cut off all his past relationships to maintain his focus. He then assured her that she was still important to him and handed her a cap. Upon arriving at her house, The woman admitted that she had misunderstood his intentions. Sang told her to put on the cap and that he would forgive her this time. As he turned to leave, she warned him that she wouldn't forgive him again. A man named Hai Song contemplates the significant impact that Sang is having on the world. Nearby, a person in a white mask apologizes, reporting that the not clone was stronger than anticipated and calling the clone a bastard. Gesung reflects to himself that the person in question was Yang Sang-woo and that he should have asked for an autograph. Another individual appears next to Gesung, asking why the lights were off. Gesung ignores the question about the darkness and instead asks if all the preparations are complete. To the person who will be starting at the academy the following week, demanding results that justify the effort it took to enroll them. The individual confirms his understanding. This person is revealed to be Shin Jung-yeon, Haesung's son. He promises his father that he won't disappoint him. Jason then instructs his son to acquire the elixir. 1 week later, at the academy, Sang's class is preparing to learn elemental magic. A classmate is already in the room when the professor arrives. He announces that their first lesson will be the fireball skill, which he describes as a versatile and popular type of magic. Sang, focused on the lesson, inwardly wonders if he needs to learn this type of magic. He recalls learning the heavy blow skill through physical action and wonders lax dat of las, how they will be taught a magic skill. And that's it. The story ends right here. So tell me, what did you think of this manhwa? Be honest, leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more crazy stories like this one.